Generation equality. Together with all the excellencies, the ministers who are here, are not going to go back to the department to ask questions, but they are here as partners, and I got full information about how our DGs have signed MOUs to make sure that we get going and we get doing. So today is going to be a much, much better day and better days before 2030. But I am not here to speak on behalf of the champion, but yes, all the impediments that were blocking women to do things themselves. Draft bills are sitting, waiting for the 2nd of November, so that Parliament passes them and we focus on this work that we said we will all do. Ariem Mashemu, Mr. President, please come and address us.
Program Director, she's run away. She's not here anymore. Oh, there she is. Program Director. Ministers who are here with us, and in particular Minister Maite Nkwana Mashabane, who's a minister in the presidency in charge of the work that we do in government, women, youth, and persons with disabilities. The chairperson of the Women's Economic Assembly, Ms. Futhi Mtoba. Deputy ministers who are also here with us. The MECs, and in particular the MEC of Economic Development, Mr. Pax Tau. Ms. Bekele Thomas, representing the UN Women, leaders of industries, and representatives of participating organizations, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a real joy and a pleasure to be here and to have been particularly welcomed by a lady who met me at the door. When I asked her who she was, she says, I am the owner of this whole complex. Now, the story couldn't have been better for me. And I started probing and asking her many questions. And she confirmed that, yes, she owns all of this. And I looked at her and I say, as I'm checking you out, you are a woman. She says, yes, I am a woman. And I was delighted. So that's great. We gathered here today to participate in the inaugural Women Economic Assembly. The mere concept of an economic assembly is a rather compelling one. But when you add that it's a women's economic assembly, it becomes a powerful notion. Through this initiative, I think we should, all of us gathered here, be looking at this as a historic moment where together we are embarking on a journey that should reshape the economy of our country, particularly focusing on reshaping and changing the lives and the opportunities of millions of South African women who, by the way, are the majority segment of the South African population. The women are in the majority and men are in the minority. Just so that we don't forget that. We have come together to give effect to one of the founding provisions of our Constitution, that our nation should be founded on human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the advancement of rights and freedoms for all South Africans. For as long as women shoulder the greatest burden of poverty, and in our country, we all know that the face of poverty is the face of a woman. For as long as they are more likely to be unemployed, for as long as they are paid much less than their male counterparts, and for as long as they struggle to start businesses, and for as long as they face continuous discrimination in the workplace, as well as harassment, for as long as women confront these and many other challenges, including death at the hands of men, including injury at the hands of men, our vision of an equal and just society will remain elusive. We will never be able to achieve it. The Women's Economic Assembly is a multi-stakeholder initiative to advance women's economic empowerment and inclusion. That's the beauty of this. Multi-stakeholder, involving a number of players in our country. And since the dawn of our democracy, we have worked to transform our society, to bridge the material divides between black and white, between men and women, between boys and girls, between urban and rural. That has been our mission. We have made significant progress in several of these areas, not least in the provision of healthcare, education, essential services, and infrastructure for the poor. But we have not fundamentally transformed patterns of ownership, of control, of management of our economy, and we have not really begun to touch on the most important part, which is getting the women of our country to play a meaningful role in the economy of their own country. The empowerment of women is therefore an integral part of our effort to achieve inclusive growth, create jobs, and expand economic opportunities for all. Because it is this, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, that for as long as we have not put the women in a position where they will play a key role, our economy cannot and is not firing on all cylinders. If a car, a really powerful car, has 6 cylinders, ours is firing on 3 cylinders, even less. And if we just begin to imagine how we are not using the full throttle power of our economy, then this analogy I'm painting is a good one. To empower the women of our country. Because in addition to being underrepresented in almost every part of the economy, in various areas. Apart from, yes, the community area and the household area and informal work, women are virtually absent as owners, as controllers, and as key managers in key sectors of our economy, be it in the engineering sector, be it in mining, be it also in agriculture, be it in steel, even in automotives, women are absent. The unemployment rate amongst women is nearly 37%, compared to 32% amongst men. In 2018, women's median monthly earnings were 76% of those of men, meaning men were earning much higher. Now, these disparities are not only the product of a profoundly imbalanced economy, an economy that is not firing on all cylinders. They also arise from and contribute to gender inequality in society. The type of gender inequality that leads to a whole lot of other problems. 42% of children in South Africa live only with their mother, compared to 4% who live only with their father. The great divide in parental responsibility translates into a great divide in economic opportunity as well as circumstance. It is only when you look at it this way that you begin to see the real impact of the disparities. It is equally disturbing that of the reasons given by children aged between 7 and 18 for not attending school or for dropping out of school, 17% of females cited family commitments. It is the girls who have to go and look after a grandparent. It is the girls who have to go and look after the mother, and so forth and so forth. While only 0.3% of boys cite this as a reason for leaving school. As it is now, as I was talking this morning at a teacher's award ceremony, where I was saying almost 1 million children register for school nearly every year, give or take a few hundreds year after year. But just take the base figure of 1 million. At the end of 12 years, some 400,000 or so of them then finish school, or 450,000. 55% has fallen out of school. And we need to ask ourselves, who are they, where are they, and why did they stop going to school? And using this type of measure, we will find that the majority of them are girls. They drop out of school for all these reasons I've cited. It is therefore abundantly clear that the economic empowerment of women is not a technical exercise achieved merely by improving policy and introducing progressive programs. It is fundamentally a process of fundamental social transformation. And this is where the theory of change needs to be put into effect, where we begin to change things, not just talk about change, but where we effect change in a fundamental manner. It is where we bring about change in institutions, in every sector of the economy, and therefore everyone must get involved. All of us must get involved in this process. For it is the one process that is going to make this engine called South Africa to operate on all cylinders. Thus far, it has been operating at even half, 50%, less than 50% of its capacity. And there is another reason why this initiative, this economic assembly, is so important. The economic empowerment of women is one of the pillars of our national strategic plan of gender-based violence and femicide. By improving the economic circumstances of women, we are reducing their vulnerability to abuse as well as to violence. By being economically dependent on male partners, women have a far better chance of getting out of an abusive relationship. A woman that is in charge of her economic future is a woman with power over her own life. If we can ensure that women and girls have tangible control over their futures and well-being, then we will have achieved something great. If we can make sure that they will no longer earn less money, and this is one thing that really bothers me, that we have continued to be an economy where men earn much more than women, whereas they do, in many cases, they do exactly the same work. That type of discrimination has to come to an end, and we must all work together to bring it to an end, both in government as well as in the economy. Now, we can create a world if we take the commitments that are going to be made today in this assembly. We can create a world where women, girls, and men and boys can all thrive, because we've had an economy that has only focused on seeing men thriving and women being left behind. And the women of our country are now saying, no, we are no longer going to be left behind. In fact, we want to be in front, and I support the women for saying so. Now, to achieve this and many others, that's why a significant portion that national governments have allocated in terms of the funds that they've been allocated in the budget are directed towards implementing the National Strategic Plan over the next few years. So we are focusing at government level on making sure that women are fully empowered. This assembly builds on that commitment that we have made, bringing together key social partners to pursue a common national goal of inclusive economic transformation. There is huge unrealized potential in the design of industry, value and supply chains, and preferential procurement to empower women. And I'm sure that's what we are going to be talking about today. Every government department and public institution and private company can and should implement mechanisms to fast-track preferential procurement for women-owned enterprises. There is simply nothing difficult about it. All we have to do is just to do it and make sure that it gets done. For I always argue, you empower a woman, you are actually empowering the nation. You empower a woman economically, you are empowering her household. Because as a mother who cares for her family always comes first. As a man, there are a whole lot of other things that come first. The presidency, working with departments such as the Department of Women, Social Development, Small Business, Rural Development and Land Reform, and National Treasury, has mapped out a strategy to achieve 40% preferential procurement in the public sector, and many more and more departments are joining in. Current public procurement accounts for about 9% of GDP, which is about 500 billion rand annually. Of this amount, 12% went to women-owned enterprises in the first and second quarter of 2021. Now, I want to see many more rands going into the hands of women, because that's how it should be. Government, working together with industry, has started building the capability of women-owned businesses to submit proposals to provide goods and services in the public and private sectors. Around 1,300 women in the Eastern Cape, in the Free State and Limpopo have so far been supported to do business with the government through this extensive capacity building program. Now, I want to hear and see that it's 1 million women, it's 3 million women, it's 10 million women. 1,300 is a good start, but I often say to my colleagues in government, we must massify what we do. We've got to increase the number, because talking about 1,300 in a population of almost 60 million, it's peanuts. It's peanuts. I want more women to get involved in this. We've got more than 30 million women in our country, so let's get on with the task. Now, some of these women are women who are business owners, who have been trained in compliance and registration, who have been trained in procurement and regulatory framework, financial literacy, marketing, as well as access to market and finance and other number of opportunities. Now, this needs to be multiplied. And it's wonderful today that we've got industry players here, because what government has initiated, they can put to good effect, perfect it, and ensure that it is more broadly spread. It has been very encouraging to hear stories like that of Ms. Mapanga from Limpopo, who attended one of their capacity building workshops. Her electrical engineering company doubled its annual turnover to the value of over 2 million during the COVID period. Just during COVID, 2 million rand turnover. Now, I want to hear that going to 10 million. She shared that the first workshop she attended provided valuable information about different service offerings from various departments and organizations, especially on access to funding. Because she was exposed and participated in this process of training, she now has the wherewithal to know where to go to access funding. She now knows how to market. She says that self-employed women usually struggle to secure funding for their business and normally do not know who to approach. Now, by putting her through this process, we have empowered her. Through this work, we are building a pipeline of women who are ready to respond to procurement calls. And the same can happen for the private sector as well. We know that even as we expand procurement opportunities for women, particularly in government, it will never be enough to answer the need. So business as a key driver of economic growth in our economy, as well as a key driver to employment, needs to step forward. And today, the inputs that will be made here, I hope will be inputs that will demonstrate that business is now ready to step forward to get on with the task of empowering the women of our country. Business needs to deliberately and actively use industry value and supply chains as the key tools that they have in economic transformation. And this should not be seen as doing a favor to the women of our country. It is actually the process of opening up all the levers, yes, of your own company, the levers of our economy, and ensuring that South Africa really does get to work. Through value chain transformation, we can promote the development of small, medium enterprises that are owned by women, owned by youth, and by black people as well, who, as we know historically, were locked out of meaningful participation in the economy of their own country. Now, by giving them the opportunity to produce value-added goods and services, companies enable these small, medium enterprises to attract investment and employ more people in productive activities. In today's engagement, I look forward to the commitments and to the bold practical steps that the business community has already started taking, will be taking to advance women's participation in supply chains. There are several targets that we should seek to advance through these commitments and plans. And I'd just like to name a few. Firstly, to increase the number of women-owned enterprises within the sector. And I think it is wrong to have a situation where in a sector of our economy we only have male players. It has become wholesomely wrong in every endeavor of South African life now to just have the same gender dominating in everything, whether in parliament, whether in political parties, whether in companies, in the boardroom. The world has embraced the notion of bringing women, empowering them. Now let us embrace that as well, so that even as we look at various sectors of our economy, we should have proper representation of women in those sectors. Secondly, we must establish an ecosystem for support for female-owned businesses, because one of the problems that women have, like Ms. Mapanga was talking about earlier, was that they have no access, they have no knowledge, they have no way of knowing how to get assistance. Now, we should create that ecosystem so that it becomes the order of things, so that women are able, yes, to have easier access to everything, markets, funding, assistance to run their businesses, and regulatory processes and all that. Thirdly, we must increase the employment of women and youth with set targets. We need to set the targets. There are still companies where it's an all-male club. And that now has to change. There are women now, where I used to be General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, used to be just men who work underground. Today, it is changing. We're seeing more and more women working also underground. We met yesterday with the presidents of Botswana, Namibia, and Mozambique. There's a war raging in the northern part of Mozambique. And I was told that there are women soldiers out there who are fighting against the insurgents. That never used to be the case. Women are surging to the fore, and let us embrace the opportunities that women are getting into. Fourthly, we need to rebuild township and rural economies in an inclusive manner. These economies have forever been economies in the rural areas and in the townships that have just been serving like dormitories and not real serious economic engagement. We now need to focus on the rural areas and the urban and the townships. Fifthly, we must create an enabling policy environment, and sixthly, to encourage similar commitments in related industries. Now, if we can underpin our theory of change through doing these 6 things and clearly more, we will effectively be changing the structure of our economy. We will effectively be empowering the women of our country. Now, if effectively implemented, this theory of change, if it's implemented by all stakeholders, our actions will benefit not only the women of this country, but the whole economy. The whole economy will now begin to fire on all cylinders. 6 cylinders, 8 cylinders. That is when the economy of our country then begins to function and to function more effectively. It is through this that employment can be created. It is through this that production can be increased. And it is through this that we can accelerate economic growth. Now, I wish to encourage other industries and economic sectors to join this initiative and make their commitments and action plans for women empowerment. Now, sometimes I sit back and I think quite deeply about some of the things that happen in our country. This is, in my view, one of the very best ways of making sure that we foster the empowerment of women. And this is the very best way of making sure that we don't do the women of our country any favors. This is their right. This is the right of women which we must make sure we give them. Now, I wish to commend all those industries and companies, as well as stakeholders, who are embarking on this journey together with us. I'd like to just say, let us use this assembly as a real turning point when it comes to the economic empowerment of women. There are various other areas that we need to address and attend to when it comes to the empowerment of women. It will be participation, yes, in government, participation in various institutions, all those. But it is the economic empowerment that, in my view, is eminently doable, and the time for us to do it is now. Let us demonstrate what is possible so that others may be encouraged and follow. And I'm so delighted that a number of key industrial CEOs and heads of various companies are here. I really am delighted because we can light this fuse. Let this fuse be lit, let this light be lit, and let us spread it around. Through this work, we are essentially going to be building a much better economy, a better society, and a better future, and a better life for the women of our country. Remembering that when we empower women, we are empowering the whole nation. Let's get on with it and get it done. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the clarion call from the President is loud and clear. We need to be firing from not 4, not 6, perhaps even 8 cylinders. And what that means is that we've got to unleash the power of the majority, and that is to unleash the power of women. This is the engine that's going to move South Africa forward. The President spoke about 6 very specific targets, which I'm sure are going to surface time and time again in the conversation that we're about to have. He also reminded us to massify, to scale, to be courageous in our decisions, and to make sure that we're not fiddling at the edges. The clarion call is to get to work, not only to empower women, but to empower the nation. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to our high-level presidential dialogue. It is my absolute pleasure at this moment to introduce Madame Futhi Mtoba, who is the co-chair of the National Strategic Plan of the Women Economic Assembly coordinating team. And she's going to join us to share an overview of the various industry master plans and what they reflect in terms of women in public and private supply chains today. Let's give her a round of applause as she makes her way up.
Thank you, Program Director. President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, ministers, distinguished guests, fellow participants, good afternoon. In preparing this speech, I was reminded of the term womanomics, coined by Kathy Matsui. This former Goldman Sachs strategist used the term to denote both a strategy and a series of comprehensive actions to promote the opportunity and capacity of women to directly contribute to inclusive economic growth. Japan started implementing their growth strategy in the context of a shrinking economic growth in 2013, having ignored the valuable contribution of women in the workforce. 6 years later, 2 million women had been added to the workforce in Japan. Womenomics had become a core pillar of Japan's growth strategy, recognizing the power of women's economic participation to mitigate demographic challenges that had threatened that Japanese economy. This story about Japan offers an important lesson for us, namely, it pays for a nation to include women in its economy. Women possess innovative capacity, resilience, and a multiplication effect, all of which could help our economy rise and to attain global recognition. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to launch a Women Economic Assembly, an initiative under Pillar 5 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, which commits to create procurement opportunities for women in the public and private sector. As an initiative and a movement, as you've heard from the President, it complements the National Strategic Plan by unlocking equal opportunity for women-owned businesses and industry supply chains, activating commitment and inspiring action and measuring progress. It also personifies a collaborative approach. It is comprised of representatives from private sector, civil society, and government. There has been notable progress since 1994. Economic and political freedom for South African women of all ages, races, social economic backgrounds are the highest they've ever been. However, access to economic opportunity is still determined by gender. We are here as a formidable collective of brave, resolute women and men to configure the Women Economic Assembly as a definite and deliberate intervention to facilitate real change and the financial emancipation of women. Working with our government and captain of industries, we will unlock opportunities within industry-specific value chain and the ecosystem, removing obstacles, mobilizing key stakeholders for action, and by reporting back annually on our progress, successes, and challenges. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition has already adopted a strategy to unlock industry supply chains. It has led the development of transformational focus master plan, which have been endorsed by industry. However, Our analysis of these master plans revealed that they are largely gender silent. This demonstrates the lack of understanding and appreciation of the specific and unique barriers that face women today as economic actors, the gap between our intention and our actions. We are here to partner with government and industry to activate real formidable transformation to increase that inclusion of women and youth and our productive capacity as a nation. Our gender analysis of 3 industry master plans, namely poultry, energy, and the automobile sector, revealed the following, Mr. President. The poultry sector, which is a pillar of South Africa's agricultural economy, it adds value to maize and soya crops, among others. It is important in food processing, adding value and creating jobs. However, its value chain is dominated by large integrated producers, including breeding and feeds. Top executives paint a bleak picture for gender transformation and equality. The creation of women-owned integrated producers is pivotal in this industry. The public and private sector must collaborate to negotiate offtake agreements with large retailers and women producers. The energy sector, our research revealed that it is driven by the Integrated Resource Plan of 2019. The electricity sector, the new gazetted regulation exempts embedded generation projects up to 100 megawatts from having to apply for licenses from the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. Our first recommendation is to develop a sector charter to ensure that this growing sector also commits to real targets for women participation in independent power producing value chain. Secondly, access to suitable land, finances, as well as skills development through a South African energy entrepreneur incubator is critical. Lastly, bid windows for women, youth, and persons with disabilities should be put in place to ensure untethered participation of these designated groups. The automotive sector. Gender transformation in this industry requires a number of critical actions that can ensure that women and youth have a meaningful role. The following of such 3 steps, critical steps. 1, the women should be supported to run and own dealership, authorized repair facilities, automotive components, and associated material manufacturing businesses. While the Automobile Industry Transformation Fund is laudable, it is an important commitment by the industry towards transformation and localization. We recommend that a gender transformational strategy be implemented immediately. Thirdly, there is a need for specialized training and skills development of women and girls, focusing on the full scope of the industry skills. Mr. President, over and above the gender analysis and research we conducted as the Women Economic Assembly, we surveyed several sector-specific women business associations for their experiences and recommendations. For example, the women in mining bemoaned the absence of a coordinated plan to bring women into mining and lack of data on participation of women in the supply chain. It recommended programs that intentionally bring women entrepreneurs to participate across the value chain with a supporting regulatory framework from government that incentivize those interventions. Women in Farming, through Afasa Women, stated that given that the sector generates 332 trillion in revenue per annum, this necessitates immediate interventions to drive inclusiveness. Critical enablers to achieve the above lies on the targeted evidence and action-oriented approach with an aim to establish a clear needs analysis for both informal and formal sector. Cross-cutting issues were land, tenure, water, license funding models that seek to address issues of the developing participation of the agri sector, trade standards, product development within the value chain, export markets, recognition of street vendors in our peri-urban areas, and development approach that talks to their needs. Women in Textile highlighted the fact that the master plan has a clear objective value chain growth in development of senior women managers, but it is silent on ownership. The sector has significant challenges that include cheap imports, uncompetitive labor costs, old infrastructure manufacturing, large lack of beneficiation and processing capacity, as well as limited capacity by SABS to deal with local production certification and standards. Given the challenges with imports, the recommendation is to put in place governance intervention and monitoring policies and tariffs across fiber, textile, clothing, leather, and footwear. Mr. President, honorable ministers, captain of industries, and honorable guests, we have summarized just a few of the sectors analyzed to demonstrate that there are many opportunities within them. However, it will take specific interventions, targeted funding, and a strong political will to maximize these opportunities. The barrier that women face necessitates specific targets to inform how we measure and track progress. As the President has already stated, let me emphasize the 6 critical aspects of the gender transformation in each industry as a measurement guideline. 1, the increase in number of women-owned enterprises operating in each of this industry value chain. 2, establish an ecosystem of support for female business owners. This talks to capacity building, which is very crucial in providing an opportunity for the women to advance. 3, the increase in employment of women and youth through decent jobs. 4, integrating industry interventions to township and rural economic development such that no one is left behind. Create an enabling policy environment, and the last one is stimulate parallel sector linked to each industry, including trade opportunities regionally and globally. If each industry were to leave this room today with a clear commitment to develop an action plan around each of these guidelines, the economic participation of women and inclusive growth could become a reality. In closing, let me stress that the planning team of the Women Economic Assembly has already demonstrated that this collaboration is possible. It is led by myself from the private sector and my co-chair, Namhla Mningi, there you are, co-chair, who is the DDG in the private office of the President. We received support from women-led business association, organized business, industry experts, and exceptional backing and leadership from the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the Presidency, and several other government departments. Such collaboration will be an imperative as we rebuild our economy together. Mr. President, together we welcome Women Economic Assembly as a vehicle to access equal business opportunity and to build a country where my granddaughters and grandsons will enjoy equal opportunities, and where the women of this country will take their rightful full participation of 50% in this economy. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was evidence-based, calling for targeted interventions, calling for political will, but also just a reflection of the approach that has underpinned the building of the Women Economic Assembly. Once again, the clarion call is that we move away from gender blind and gender silent towards gender inclusive. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to share with you now a snippet of the experiences of women in business, in supply chains. Please turn your attention to the video, and I'd like to mention to all of those that are connected with us on all the platforms, you do have the option of moving to the Vodacom Free to Connect line or link, and that will allow you to continue these proceedings at no data charge. For now, ladies and gentlemen, let's enjoy these experiences as they've been captured.
So we receive financial support from a few public and private institutions. We've received support from the GIZ, which is part of the German embassy, and they've really contributed towards capacity building of the business in terms of human resource development, as well as reaching compliance in terms of food safety accreditation. We've also received support from the Department of Science and Innovation towards the acquisition of food and tea processing machinery, and as well as towards research and development. Along the journey of building a business, there's a number of other risks that come to play. Business continuity is a risk that came into play during COVID, knowing whether you're going to be able to survive throughout a pandemic, and other economic and social issues such as the looting that took place in the country really created a threat to the business. But aside from that, the economic risks and really the risk of whether you'll be able to generate income is really a risk that threatens the growth of any small business.
A lot of our market access was helped by me joining various women business owners networks. I joined organizations like WPO and We Connect, and this really facilitated us as a manufacturer into the space where people are specifically looking for women-owned businesses.
Our mentor, that is 55 years in the space of manufacturing and designing mining equipment, helped us to shatter the glass ceiling, because the market was very, very white male dominated. It also doesn't have a lot of black women, so they were really holding our hand in terms of accessing the market.
You need to ensure that you have got a proper financial planning. You need to have a financial forecast before you even spend your money. Because one thing that makes businesses to fail is because we cannot focus. If you cannot focus, it means you will spend haphazardly. Be responsible and save for rainy days. Otherwise, the business will be history.
Watch how you overextend yourself on the debt side, because that eats up into your profit without knowing it. Don't take on more debt than you need. Be very frugal, be very sensible when it comes to the type of debt you do. Become friends with the numbers as well. Cash flow management is not a historical exercise. It's something that you do daily.
We at Mweli have managed our cash flow with our dedicated team through thorough research and what experience has taught us this far. Being able to keep focus on our crop produce, our cash crops, which bring in cash daily, weekly, on a monthly basis, relying on our forecast and the budget, which advises us on when and what and how much is needed. Having cash flow is very important and vital. One is able to know and understand what the produce requirements are, ensuring that there is enough cash for the task at hand and it is well budgeted for.
I definitely see a lot of opportunity in various sectors, and there shouldn't be a specific sector. I mean, if you look at South Africa, there's opportunity in the energy space, there's opportunity in technology, there's opportunity in manufacturing, FMCG. So I definitely see women playing in those spaces where there are opportunities. Definitely they have to be empowered and be able to be supported to be able to thrive in those industries.
Agriculture and agro-processing, which both carry and have a huge potential within the fourth industrial revolution. The agro-processing space does not only add value to the produce, but seeks to put business within the value chain, as well as being able to tap into multiple streams of income and a great IT-centered and related human opportunities, which ensure that both the company's missions are achieved with maximization of profits and as well as human capital development and contributing towards food security.
I'd say the cybersecurity space, a whole lot of things have gone digital these days. A whole lot of things need some form of security, and I think it's an avenue that's going to have a lot of growth in the future.
Gentlemen, these are the faces that we're talking about when we're saying empowering women across supply chains in South Africa, not only to participate in the national economy, but to access markets in the region, on the continent, and globally. The President has called for commitment and practical steps. And so with that, we're moving to the gender transformation in automotive sector conversation. This is, of course, the largest manufacturing sector in the country's economy, the automotive industry. The question is, how might we ensure that as this sector rebounds, it does so with women in the driving seat? To help us answer that question, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Pieter van Binzenbergen, the CEO of BMW, alongside Dr. Sizeka Magwenju-Rensburg, the chairperson of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, to respond to the question. Please, may I have you both on stage?
Thank you, Program Director, His Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, Honorable Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Minister Nkoana Mashabane, Honorable Ministers, dignitaries, government officials, and all those joining us both here and virtually, good afternoon. It's a privilege for us to participate today at this important session on women empowerment. As the President already told us, women empowerment is a key transformation pillar for our country, as it not only seeks to drive economic prosperity, but is essential to reduce and prevent violence against women and girls. And I believe very strongly that it's imperative that we promote a society here in South Africa that is inclusive, not only on the race level, but that also sees both women and men as equals. So I'm honored to represent the automotive industry in my role as the lead of the Transformation Workstream, which reports into the Executive Oversight Committee set up by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Dr. Sizeka Rensburg, the chairperson of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, and I will outline today what we can do to contribute to the task of women empowerment here in South Africa. The Transformation Workstream has the mandate to drive transformation within the entire auto industry, and in so doing, steer and deliver on this important aspect of the South African Automotive Master Plan 2035 and the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Policy. We take this task very seriously, and together with key stakeholders in the automotive value chain, have tackled it through a classical project management approach, which you'll find is how we drive any projects and any business objectives back in our businesses. In other words, develop the as-is situation, define realistic but ambitious goals, and then strive to close this gap by creating and stringently implementing measures and measuring the status of these measures at timeous intervals. In close collaboration with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we've already made progress. 5 of the 7 producing original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs as we call them, here in South Africa are already BBB EE rated 4, and all 7 will be within the next year. However, there is still a lot of work to be done in order to deliver real, meaningful transformation in our industry, and that's the task which lies ahead of us. Now, in line with the South African Automotive Master Plan objective to produce 1% of global vehicle production by 2035 here in South Africa, our goal is to transform the entire value chain by increasing participation of Black people and stimulating job creation via a number of interventions. For example, the provision of funding to enable ownership, the provision of capacity building and skills development to build a sustainable pipeline, improving participation in management structures, and the creation of market access and thus jobs. This approach fully embraces the task of contributing to empowering women in our industry and correcting the imbalances of the past. Thus, I can say we are here today to confirm our commitment to the objectives set by the Women's Economic Assembly and to add these objectives to our target framework and to our measures plan. There are already a number of measures in place which I'd like to give as an example. For example, a program called High Gear for school leavers, which focuses specifically on women, youth, and people with disabilities, and is developed together with TVET colleges to better align whereby 50% are earmarked for women. And important leadership development programs aimed at increasing the number of women in leadership positions throughout the value chain. And here is an example I can talk for BMW, both in South Africa and on the global level. We drive gender equity through clear targets for representation of women at all levels of management within our company. However, the most powerful initiative that we have in our hands today is the Automotive Investment Conference back in 2019. This fund has been created specifically to drive transformation forwards, covering many facets which I just mentioned. Thus, I'm thrilled to now hand over to Dr. Sizeka Rensburg, the chairperson of the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, in order to tell us what we are currently doing and what opportunities lie ahead. Thank you very much. Dr. Sizeka.
Thank you, Peter. His Excellency President Ramaphosa, honorable ministers and MECs, leaders in business, industry, and civil society, ladies and gentlemen. As Peter indicated, the 7 original equipment manufacturers, that is the OEMs, namely BMW, Ford, Isuzu, Mercedes-Benz, Nissan, Toyota, and VW, established the Automotive Industry Fund, Transformation Fund, and AITF for short, to support the participation of Black-owned enterprises in the value chain of the automotive industry. This is a 6 billion rand industry-wide initiative in support of the objectives of the South African Automotive Master Plan, designed to transform the automotive industry by broadening and deepening the participation of Black-owned businesses to contribute to the sustainable growth and development of the industry. The AITF, therefore, will play a critical role in the implementation of this master plan, especially on localization and transformation. The fund started operations in January 2021. Our mission is to accelerate the empowerment of Black South Africans within the auto industry. This we achieve by funding, developing capacity, and facilitating access to markets for Black-owned businesses. Our efforts should see substantial increase in the creation of Black-owned automotive component manufacturers within the automotive supply chain, thus creating sustainable employment opportunities. Since commencing this journey, we are encouraged by the strides we are making. We have already funded and supported 6 Black-owned enterprises with 82 million rands, creating 573 jobs. This funding and support resulted in a 1.9 billion rand access to market in the supply chain of one and a number of other founding OEMs. We are proud that one of the businesses we have funded and supported is Anax Services, a 30% Black-owned business based in East London in the Eastern Cape. As a result of this funding and support from AITF, Anax 25 million rands in the next 3 years. Going forward, we will certainly ensure that more women-owned businesses are supported. We recognize that the automotive industry still has a lot to do to meaningfully facilitate the participation of women in its value chain. The establishment of AITF marks the beginning of that journey and demonstrates the commitment of the key industry players, enabling the participation of Black-owned and Black women-owned businesses in this industry. With the support of our founding OEMs, the AITF will do everything possible to play its critical role in facilitating the achievement of this goal. We consider our work as critical in contributing to Goal 5 of the SDGs, for all women and girls, and also to Principle 5 of the UN Women's Empowerment Principles, that is, implement enterprise development, supply chain, and marketing practices that empower women. Our participation in this session demonstrates our commitment to contributing to the objectives of this Women's Economic Assembly. And going forward, we commit to the following 3 actions. Number 1, deepening the conversation for women economic empowerment within the automotive industry. Number 2, creating a platform for women in the automotive industry to identify the hurdles preventing them to meaningfully participate in the automotive industry and facilitate access to opportunities within the value chain. And lastly, considering a minimum of 30% of funding by AITF going to women-owned businesses. As the AITF, we are committed to contribute to women economic empowerment, and we will play our role in facilitating this ideal within the automotive industry. We recognize that in doing so, we will have to partner and collaborate with other players. Therefore, we commit to this Women's Economic Assembly to be part of the journey towards women economic emancipation. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I certainly hope that those commitments and practical actions resounded as clearly as they did up here on stage. What we heard was moving beyond CSI, but ensuring that as we launch a 6 billion rand initiative, that women have their share. We heard about committing to deepening the conversation, committing to creating a platform where hurdles might be identified, but more importantly, where opportunities into the value chain might be facilitated, and committing to 30% of all AITF funding going to women-owned businesses in the sector. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to transition us to gender transformation in the steel sector. Now, with the newly minted Steel and Metal Fabrication Master Plan, the question we'd like to ask is, how will this sector that contributes 600 billion rand to gross domestic product ensure that for the industry that its blueprint is inclusive of women who are active participants across the value chain? To help us answer this, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Madame Leslie Squires, Director for the Southern Africa Stainless Steel Development Association, to share with us. Let's give her a round of applause as she comes up.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, ministers, dignitaries, and industry partners, all protocols observed. I'm with SASDA, the Southern African Stainless Steel Development Association, and my focus will be on women and how to grow their role in the stainless steel sector. SASDA is a recognized official body of the stainless industry since 1964, and our focus is on increasing consumption of stainless steel locally, with a view to creating decent jobs and making the industry competitive and facilitate exports. In terms of our association, we've made steady progress towards empowering women. And at this stage in our history, we can claim 75% of the permanent employees of SASDA are women. 100% of the consultants we employ at SASDA are women. In terms of our membership, of around 200 member companies, 25% of our members have 40% or more female ownership. We are also very proud of the level of professional women in our industry, whether business owners, financial or technical experts. When I was invited to join Wakona, we decided to interview some of our female members and get their insights on what they saw happening in the industry. One of them commented that traditionally, the manufacturing and steel industry has been dominated by society, culture, parents, and the education system. It is a classic case of gender stereotyping that women are not suited or don't have the aptitude for this industry with its many facets. She felt strongly that this is not true, and it's important that through transformation to instill a sense of confidence in women, that no industry is off limits to women. There is a need to create an environment that is diverse and inclusive, not based on gender, but based on capabilities, skills, potential, value systems, and having the right attitude and work ethics. By having more female leaders, it will encourage our young women to enter this industry as well. Another female-led member feels that currently there are not enough women players in the industry, and despite the fact that women are an available and abundant resource that could be a pool of talent and utilized very well within our sector. However, the stark reality is that women are mostly found in traditional roles such as administration and accounting. It is rare to find women in manufacturing and the distribution of stainless steel and other stainless steel products. Stainless steel is a technical environment, and women should be encouraged at tertiary level to study engineering-related studies, to build industry knowledge, and to enable them to compete. Companies should also be inspired to offer artisan opportunities that include women to build real skills and give them the ability to gain access to technical jobs as well as entrepreneurial advantage in this sector. There are many opportunities in the downstream industries. Women can get involved in the manufacturing of stainless steel products. Women become wholesalers, distributors of stainless steel, and many other options. However, to succeed, they will need financial as well as non-financial assistance, such as access to markets, for example, to become meaningful players. The benefit of this is that women will bring diversity and a new way of thinking to a male-dominated industry. Women also tend to be more empathetic to issues related to environment, social, and health, and going forward for any organisation to be sustainable, these cannot be ignored. To achieve this type of transformation over the last decade, it has been an industry focus to work more proactively with government, and as such, SASDA has been working very closely with the DTIC on the Steel Master Plan. The Master Plan includes the localisation of product and import substitution. This is very exciting for the stainless steel industry, but we can only achieve this through empowering people in the industry and developing downstream markets. This is also important to the national goals set by government, and SASDA believes that the strengthening synergy between industry and government can lead to the eradication of unemployment and poverty, or at the very least go a long way to solving some of our socio-economic challenges. Our statistics show that stainless steel and the conversion of it through skilled workers can lead to a very positive contribution to job creation. In terms of job creation and empowerment, for every tonne of stainless steel converted locally, we can equate it to 30 to 40 jobs per tonne, and this is instrumental in the fight against poverty. Looking ahead, the Women's Economic Assembly collaboration will assist our sector to fast-track gender endeavours and tangible targets to aim the development process of women in our organisation and industrial sector. Women will remain a key focus of our strategy and in the rollout of the value chain of the industry. We will continue featuring successful women as role models to the youth in our publications. We've been doing that for some time already. We can today, as SASDA, commit to continue the current levels of involvement of women in our industry and association with the aim of growing this number by 20%. We also commit to free and specific training programs for all women in our industry in 2022. We also commit to identifying women in our membership who can be further empowered through training and mentorship, and identify mentors within our industry to assist these women. Finally, let us not forget the words of Graça Machel. We should be respectful, but we must also have the courage to stop harmful practices that impoverish girls, women, and their communities. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, loud and clear from Madame Leslie Squires, as she says, we're going to continue on many of the initiatives already taken, but we're going to ensure this free and specific training. We're going to identify women for opportunities in men. We're going to continue to challenge the narrative that some industries are off limits. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to gender transformation in the energy sector. Now, I would like to exercise my moderating superpowers at this point and to appeal to all the speakers who are going to come up on stage next, that let's demonstrate agility and efficiency. I'm going to call on us to be concise and to the point. We're running about 20 minutes behind schedule, and I'd really like for us to catch up. So let's show that we can be efficient, we can be agile, we can be concise, and we can still make practical commitments. And so, as we look at transformation in the energy sector now, as the country's energy mix shifts away from coal towards wind and solar power, the question is, ladies and gentlemen, how might the sector accelerate gender transformation to harness the innovation of women-led businesses in the energy value chain? And what policy interventions and programs might the department implement to promote gender transformation? To help us answer this, please help me welcome the Director General in the Department of Minerals, Resources and Energy, Mr. Thabo Mokoena, and allow us to also just extend an apology on behalf of Minister Gwede Mandashe, who had an emergency and could not be with us this afternoon. To Mr. Mokoena, please, a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Program Director. His Excellency, the Honorable President, Mr. Matamela Sri Ramaphosa, Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, MECs present, chairpersons and CEOs of state-owned enterprises and various private sector companies present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would make sure that I comply with your directive, Program Director. It is with a profound gratitude that I participate in this inaugural Women's Economic Assembly, which, as the President has highlighted, the importance of this event without getting into the details. His Excellency has outlined the primary objective of this assembly. According to the International Energy Agency 2019 article on energy and gender, the energy sector remains one of the least gender diverse sectors, and also closing this gender gap would be vital as women are key drivers of innovative and inclusive solutions. Despite making up 48% of the global labor force, women only account for 22% of the traditional energy sector. For management levels, the numbers are even much lower. I will just highlight that, when you look at the department's goal is to ensure that we transform the energy and mining sectors to reflect the population of South Africa and also to ensure equal, meaningful, and impactful participation of women across the energy value chain. In the state-owned enterprises, government has driven transformation. I'm dealing specifically with our department here. At leadership level, we have seen good progress. The energy sector, while it has not yet achieved the acceptable level of transformation, has nonetheless achieved significant progress. In the energy state-owned enterprises, we have 32 women as board members, and 3 of these are chairpersons of the boards. We also have appointed 3 CEOs to run the SOEs. Now, in terms of different sectors that we are governing, I'll be very brief on this part. On oil and gas sector, in the oil and gas sector, we have a total of 18 big companies. Out of these, 5 have chairpersons of the companies as women. And now I'll just mention the companies as well. We have BP, SA, Total Energies, Elegant Fuels, Makwande Trading, and Wasa Gases. In the meantime, 4 companies also have women CEOs, namely BPSA, Total Energies, Makwande, and also Elegant Fuels. However, transformation in the sector remains limited, hence the need to accelerate transformation through gender-inclined procurement, amongst others. On the power sector, as one of the speakers also articulated on this point, there are 90 independent power producers in the country with a total capacity of 6,322 megawatts. These renewable energy IPP program projects have achieved an overall of 48.6% of black women employment in top management. During construction, IPPs employed over 5.3 women, and also at operation, they have achieved 3,600 women. In order to facilitate skills-based empowerment in the power sector, the IPPs have awarded a total of 1,142 bursaries, of which 640 were awarded to rural women. Your Excellency, the Honourable President, and also our important guests here this afternoon, in terms of the enterprise development, the IPPs have supported 1,355 SMMEs, of which 596 are women-owned. The department, together with energy companies in South Africa, has issued a total of 320 bursaries, and more than half of these have been awarded to girls who are currently studying as institutions. Now, I'll deal with procurement opportunities briefly. Through the Integrated National Electrification Program, the department managed to align and signed off a contract with ESCOM and all municipalities to ensure that 850 million rand of the INEP budget is spent on women-owned enterprises or companies, as well as youth and people with disabilities. It is anticipated that this figure will grow year to year until we reach above 50% of the INEF budget dedicated for procurement. We make emphasis of this each time when we launch projects like social and labor projects, and also in conjunction with INEP projects, so that we can be able to create awareness to our people about the work that the government is doing to make sure that there is a gender-inclined transformation. The total procurement spent to date on the IPP program as of June 2021 is 4.8 billion, of which 3 has so far been spent by women-owned vendors. I must actually acknowledge, Your Excellency, Mr. President, that the number is still quite low, and we are putting all the necessary measures in place to ensure that we improve on this one. On business opportunities in the power, oil, and gas sectors, we just want to highlight that these are the opportunities that are available for our women enterprises, as I've mentioned, under INEP program, small-scale embedded generation, IPP program, LP gas sector projects, petroleum projects, as well as gas projects. And so we'll be having interactions so that we can be able to share more information with our women on these programs. Your Excellency, we do have challenges. In the interest of time, I would not lament on the challenges, but these are the challenges that we have developed a plan of action on how to address all these challenges that our women are faced with, because they came out of the interactions that we had with our women. Now, under the DMRE regulatory frameworks and also structure, the energy sector, women empowerment and gender equality policy has been approved. Now, the primary objective of this policy is to give a vision and also a framework that will guide the process of developing policies, procedures, and practices that will serve our women, and also to ensure that equal rights and opportunities for women are made available or are secured. We also have a strategy which we call the Wedge Strategy and Implementation Plan for the energy sector that has been approved and launched by the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy during August 2021. The strategy serves as a vehicle to drive the implementation of the gender policies and frameworks to achieve women economic empowerment. On the energy sector, Ministerial Gender Advisory Council was also launched, and the members have been appointed and were announced also to the sector. The council is established to provide strategic and technical support and also to advise the minister around issues relating to women economic emancipation. The department has established a Women in Energy Business Directorate, which is an online business directorate for women-owned businesses in the energy sector. The website is publicly accessible, and registration is for free for suppliers. There is currently more than 600 energy sector women and businesses registered. There are different women in energy associations that have been established. That is South African Females in Energy Efficiency, Women in Renewable Energy, Women in Nuclear South Africa, Women in LPG, Women in the Upstream Petroleum SA, Women in Oil and Energy South Africa, and many other associations supported by the department to ensure that the transformation driven through collective support. As the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, we remain committed, as per the directive from His Excellency, the Honorable President, to ensure that we realize the Common Generation Equality Forum target of 40% women empowerment in the minerals and energy sectors through all these policy instruments. even to do better, as we have made a commitment that we need to go beyond 50% so that we can have a very impactful programs to our women. We will endeavor, that our budget vote next year continue to reflect these opportunities or commitments as we have made. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we've heard is an ambitious commitment to say that we're not going to stop at 40%, and in fact, we're going to look to surpass this, reaching 50%, and it is going to be reflected in our budgets. And look out for the budget vote, where we can begin to see some of that accountability coming through. At this moment, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to gender transformation in the agriculture sector. Now, the question here becomes, if agriculture is the foundation of developing economies, how is the sector positioning women to do more than just sow the seeds of growth, but to be empowered to drive the sector's contribution to the country's GDP, to food security, to social welfare, to job creation and ecotourism, and to do this while adding value to the country's wealth of raw materials? To help us answer the question is Madame Andrea Kamfer. She's standing by. She is the chairperson of AgriSA, looking after the Risk and Disaster Management Foundation. Andrea, it's over to you.
Good afternoon, His Excellency, President Ramaphosa, Honourable Ministers and distinguished guests. I stand on behalf of Mr. Christopher Nereda today, who is the Executive Director at AgriSA, who unfortunately cannot be here due to sudden illness. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to give industry perspective on gender transformation in the agricultural sector. We would also like to thank our contributors, SA Cane Growers and Cotton SA. We will be looking into the barriers, actions, opportunities and solutions which can contribute to gender transformation across the agricultural value chain. The biggest barriers that women are facing, according to the latest land audit conducted by the Department of Agriculture, is that individual males own 72% of farms while women only 13% thereof. There is no mouthpiece for women to challenge social gender norms that place women at risk in terms of land tenure. Culture, patriarchy, traditional values inhibit progress amongst women in agriculture. Lack of tenure security for people living in communal areas impact negatively on the rights of women to own land or inherit land. Poor rural infrastructure not supportive of small-scale farmers seeking access to bigger markets. Inadequate resources to support farmers in terms of biosecurity and research and development. Despite policy pronouncements of prioritizing women applicants, official data shows that women are marginalized in terms of land distribution programs, consisting less than a quarter of beneficiaries nationally. In response to the barriers above, the sector has taken actions to bring more women into the agricultural value chain. For instance, female growers in the sugar industry form nearly half of the industry's total growers, with approximately 53% of female small-scale growers and 9% large-scale growers. The industry strategy seeks to promote female grower in development. In the Sugar Sector Transformation Plan, the industry approved additional transformation fund with 1 billion rand over a period of 5 years towards transformation, with 200 million specifically planned for each season for 8 interventions, including women enterprise development. Industry Women Transformation Plan 8 was established to focus on women with an objective of setting Women Enterprise Development Program. SA Cane Growers initiatives, Women Transformation Plan, supported and actualized the vision of the women in sugarcane of being organized, trained in leadership to be able to register primary cooperatives in each area that will implement development. While also looking into opportunities within the cotton industry, it is estimated that for each hectare of cotton, 1.3 job opportunities are created. During the 2021 and 2022 season, approximately 6,862 jobs will be created at local farm level. According to international standards, with each ton of cotton lint produced, 5 persons will be employed in the complete textile industry. Thus, with the estimated production of 9,675 lint bales by small-scale farmers, in addition, 9,676 jobs will then be created in 1 year. The fact that the complete small-scale farmers' crop is handpicked in South Africa creates the valuable job opportunities in rural areas specifically. Cotton is not a perishable and does not need expensive handling facilities to reach the first level of processing at cotton ginneries. An opportunity for women is being lost due to the fact that we export our cotton lint for processing, only to import it back to the very same community. The small-scale cotton farmers from Ngumazi area in Mpumalanga province will benefit from the construction of a cotton gin, thus entrenching 60% women participation and uplift the whole community at large. As Agri-SA is an apex organization within the agricultural sector, through our sister company, Agri-SA Enterprises, we have established that Agri-Enterprises Training and Development Academy, whose sole purpose is to provide industry-specific scarce skills training. We believe that education is one of the weapons which we can use to drive gender transformation and create industry champions. To showcase some of the work we've done by the Academy, we start off with the Agricultural Leadership Training Program, which is an in-house internship program hosted every year which exposes female agricultural graduates to specialist areas such as land, agricultural economics, and disaster management. Agri-SA, in partnership with Agri-CETA, is also currently training over 700 black livestock farmers over the next 2 years, with the vision of integrating them into local farmer structures. Through our comprehensive mentorship initiative, small-scale farmers are given the opportunity to be mentored by industry leaders while implementing what they have learned into their own farms. Our vision for the project is to build capacity and development in scarce skills critical to food and the fiber value chains. But looking forward, what are the solutions that we as an industry can put forward in a gender transformation plan? We firstly need to establish a Women in Agriculture movement, which gives women an organized voice in the sector. We further need to place a focus on financing through Agri-BE Fund to support the blended financing mechanism managed by the private sector as well as a collaboration with the state. With land being the main aspect in agriculture, we need to ensure that long-term leases and transfer of ownership takes place. Skills and development training must also be center stage in skills levy and a skills levy being fully optimized. Extension support is also needed through private sector in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture. Market access is critical. Commodity organizations, agribusinesses, retailers, municipalities, government departments can play a huge role in ensuring market access. Partnerships and mentoring between developed and developing farmers can ensure long-term sustainability of farms. So in essence, the agricultural sector remains committed to being the forefront in breaking the glass ceiling on gender transformation, and this takes the form of placing women in critical roles across the whole value chain to ensure sustainable agriculture. Thank you.
A very big thank you to Andrea Kamfer. She speaks to us about how the agricultural sector will ensure that women remain at the forefront and to improve ways to get women to the forefront of this sector. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are turning our focus to provincial transformation in the context of recovery. We're going to be looking or putting a gender lens as we engage with Gauteng. Now, we know that Gauteng is the economic hub of South Africa. It is the 7th largest economy in Africa and the 26th largest urban region in the world. It is both the financial and technological nerve center of the continent. The question we're putting to Mr. Parkstar as he walks up is women's economic empowerment in provincial transformation, and what is the role of women in particular in the province's vision of growing Gauteng Together 2030. Mr. Parkstar, MEC for Economic Development, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Your Excellency President Ramaphosa, Minister in the Presidency, Ministers here present, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored sincerely to participate in this Women's Economic Assembly and therefore be part of this important initiative to connect and provide actionable programs to transform value chain ecosystems and create clear pathways for women-owned businesses. Our plan to rebuild and ramp up the growth of the Gauteng City region through the Growing Gauteng Together 2030 Plan of Action has specific and important objectives that go beyond mere economic growth. The Growing Gauteng Together 2030 strategy commits our government to drive inclusive growth, which deliberately targets the areas and the people who experience the highest structural disadvantage, with women bearing the greatest brunt. We are proud of the commitment made by our Premier that will now be sourcing 40% of goods and services in the Gauteng provincial government from women-owned and women-empowered businesses. Our task as a department will objective into realizable outcomes. This is the next phase of a deliberate agenda, deploying the levers of government in the service of economic empowerment with a deliberate bias to women. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our government in Gauteng has made progress in promoting women's rights and addressing the plight of women and girls through policy, legislation, programs, and through various institutional mechanisms. The dire economic conditions faced by far too many households intensify all these dire consequences and present a structural barrier to the full empowerment of women. The coronavirus pandemic deepened and worsened all this further. It is important, therefore, to see the Gauteng Economic Recovery Plan also as a women empowerment plan, and we are working in a range of ways to deliberately target as such. As we upgrade and supercharge the industrial corridors of Gauteng through our network of special economic zones and create the conditions for new cities to rise in Lanseria, the West Rand, and the Vaal, we can and must create new opportunity horizons for businesses of all sizes owned and run by women. Our Action Lab program, which uses partnerships between government and the organized private sector to chase new growth frontiers in specific sectors, deliberately focuses on how we can create space for women across sector value chains. Our Action Lab with the Agriculture Development Agency, a component of the PPGI, is focused on building the full value chain spectrum, linking smallholder production through agri-logistics networks and agri-hubs into new agro-processing scale initiatives with a focus on scaling for export. This will directly support the commitment to commercialize an initial 50 Gauteng smallholder farmers and 20 agro-processors, and we are targeting at least half of these to be women. The Global Business Services workforce that can rise in our townships because of work we are doing with the Action Lab for that sector will, to a large extent, be women-led. Between business and digital services delivered from our townships, we're talking of at least 100,000 net new jobs over the next 2 to 3 years. And based on the evidence of our TSEPO 1 million program, 60,000 of these, or 60% or more of these, should be filled by women. To achieve this for our women and for all our citizens in general, we will need to liberate our townships from the current reality where 9 out of 10 people in these areas can only access the internet via their phones. The Broadband Action Lab with the Digital Council has also given us the roadmap on how to make this happen. As we diversify the supply chains within these high-growth sectors, that is agro-processing, FMCG, global business services, we are focused on women owners taking up their rightful share of the commercial benefit. The same will be true as we activate our labs on green energy, logistics, and cannabis. Mr. President, we cannot do this by simply changing supply chain management practices. We are using our sector action labs to create a deliberate mass-scale enterprise and supplier development program linking the historically disadvantaged with major value chains. This includes access through offtakes, targeted business development support, and targeted purchase order financing. In many cases, it also requires clustering for scale. For example, we are now assembling and activating a database of emerging farmers that can collectively supply large-scale orders to government facilities. And these include our hospitals, our schools through school feeding schemes, and indeed an agreement we have with the SANDF to ensure access to our farmers in the province of Gauteng. All these sectoral supply chain systems are being harnessed to deliberately support women-owned and women-empowering businesses as part of the supplier pipeline being developed. As we roll this out, it is important to recall that disadvantage in Gauteng intersects strongly with where you live and how formal your access to the economy is. Women, being twice as likely to live in poverty, are twice as likely to live in deprived areas and rely on the unstable informal economy for their livelihoods. Therefore, the Township Economic Development Agenda in the Gauteng City region of 2021 is by definition an economic empowerment agenda for women. In recognizing that those who operate in unregulated spaces are the most disadvantaged people, our Township Economic Development Bill is creating a new kind of economic geography, the Township Enterprise Zone. Program Director, we will use these zones for what is known as benefit stacking. We will target everything government can do at these zones. This includes funding, procurement, special bylaws which cut red tape, tax breaks, dedicated programs, and in this way we will stack the benefits to the people who live and work in these zones, to the businesses who operate in these zones. For the women-owned businesses in these zones, whether formal or informal, this means it will be much easier, faster, and licensed to operate and to connect with all the benefits of the formal economy. For the women that live and work in these new township enterprise zones who dream of starting new businesses of any size across our 10 high-growth priority sectors, this bill will give you access to new kinds of funding and open you up to new markets linked to government and big business. The 40% procurement from women-owned enterprises will deliberately intersect with procurement from these new township enterprise zones, meaning that women from townships are being deliberately targeted for value chain integration. Regulating better can only go so far without access to funding. Our new Township Economy Partnership Fund, by supporting the most inclusive, the most scalable way of creating access to finance across unbanked and underbanked township-based SMMEs, will directly serve the interests of financially excluded women-owned and women-run SMMEs. This fund will create meaningful access to funding for SMMEs that can grow and create jobs, but are locked out when banks ask for things like audited financial statements, collateral, or a banking history. The new partnership fund blends government money with private sector money as wholesale loans to these intermediaries, and the intermediaries in turn must be agile, accessible, and innovative in all ways in all the ways government reasonably struggles to be. Our aim is to pump up 1 billion worth of loan finance into township businesses over the coming months, scaling this up significantly in the medium term. We'll strive for at least 40 to 50% of that going to women-owned enterprises and women-empowering enterprises. I should, as I conclude, acknowledge the pivotal role of the IDC in partnering with the Gauteng Provincial Government in the establishment of these funding instruments and the partnerships we're generating with private sector partners as we gear our investments into greater investments into township enterprises and transformation in the economy. As I conclude, we commit ourselves to genuinely shared prosperity, a bedrock condition of a truly non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic society. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, genuinely shared prosperity. We've heard of township enterprise zones. We've heard of funding instruments that are going to be unleashed and unlocked. We've heard about a whole of society pipeline, supplier pipeline development. And so a massive thank you to MEC for Economic Development, Mr. Parkstow. To round off this presidential dialogue session, before we call our president back to reflect on what he's heard, we're going to now turn our focus to creating an effective funding environment for women in business. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we do know that when women have access to finance, they build businesses that have a direct impact on reducing poverty. We heard the president reminding us that they not only support their families, but they support their communities. They accelerate job creation and they increase the productive capacity of an inclusive economy. The question, therefore, is how do we create an effective funding environment to unleash the power of women in business? To help us answer this, Madame Busi Mabuza is standing by, the board chairperson of the IDC. Let's give her a round of applause, please.
Thank you so much, Nozipho, Program Director, His Excellency President Ramaphosa. It's not lost on me that I'm standing here between your reflections that people want to hear. And I wasn't assisted by MEC Tau because he seemed to be addressing all the issues that we're supposed to address. However, ladies and gentlemen, funding, an effective funding environment is a critical enabler to all the initiatives that we've been talking about today. Development finance institutions, and I do recognize Minister Nkwana Mashabane, especially, and all the ministers present here today, all protocol observed. Development finance institutions have taken their space at the forefront globally when it comes to providing funding that is appropriate to women entrepreneurs, as well as innovating on gender-smart investment strategies. Precisely because of our experience in funding at the leading, and some may say bleeding edge of a business life cycle, when businesses, business ideas, business plans, and projects are considered unbankable. DFIs understand that non-financial support is often as important, if not more important, than the financial support, which many may regard as our core business. It's at the confluence of the financial and non-financial interventions in support of entrepreneurs that we start materializing the impact that is envisaged in our mandates, which for the IDC is industrial capacity development and jobs-rich industrial growth towards a more inclusive economy. The non-financial support component of our funding packages is a necessary ingredient for a conducive and effective environment for women who are looking for funding. I speak today, ladies and gentlemen, from a perspective not just of the IDC, but also of other DFIs, as well as the various gender-focused impact funds that we've seen mushrooming in various geographies, including our own. The African Development Bank's Gender Equality Index estimates that eliminating gender inequality and empowering women could raise the productive potential of 1 billion Africans, delivering considerable boost to the continent's development potential. It's a fact that there's no lack of funding locally and globally. Yet women remain underserved in financial markets. Private equity, venture capital, and private debt vehicles with a gender lens impact, only with the gender lens impact focus, are reported to have raised over $4.8 billion US in 2019. And this was up from 1.1 billion in 2017. This is according to the Wharton Social Impact Initiative. These were just the private sector funding pools and not the DFIs. So if the funding is a problem, why do the majority of women entrepreneurs list access to funding as one of the persisting barriers they continue to face? Yet at the same time, we on the other side of the funding table claim not to have a sufficiently robust pipeline. 3 of the 4 reasons often put forward for the limitations faced by women entrepreneurs on accessing finance compared to their male counterparts are non-financial. I promise you they are non-financial. This is precisely why the non-financial support is critical to an effective funding environment. The interventions required are a two-way street, of course, where both the financier and the entrepreneur should navigate closer to that sweet spot where we can find each other. Starting with the financial constraint most talked about and already mentioned today, which is the lack of collateral and other capital contribution to de-risk the funding provided to the entrepreneur. Access to supply chain opportunities changes the ball game almost immediately, because all of a sudden, funders should be able to assess not just the entrepreneur's credit risk, but also the off-taker's credit risk. So I expect that we should be able to deliver much more diligently and much more quickly going forward because of this opportunity. Non-financial support, which has been much talked about today, of course includes institutional networks and partnerships to support women entrepreneurs. In some instances, coaching and mentoring services may be needed, and we recognize that. These are aimed at addressing precisely the lack of access to information on available sources of capital, opportunities, and markets, and we heard quite a lot about that already. Institutional networks should also be availed to help address the limited networks. And these, of course, should include, as colleagues have already indicated, clusters of women entrepreneurs in a supportive ecosystem, be it sector-focused or just enterprise-focused. With regards to the lack of confidence, which is another limitation that some may highlight, lack of confidence in women's ability, an aspect which covers both self-confidence as well as the many hoops that women entrepreneurs are made to jump through to gain the confidence of the financiers who sit across the table from them. The environment in which the funding services are offered is very important. Investment teams, ladies and gentlemen, should be diverse and gender balanced. It has also been recognized that funders must ensure that services are available in safe and easy, accessible venues for women. Also ensuring that the service is efficient and accessible, enabling women to spend as little time as possible seeking this funding. If If I may go to the Fund Manager's Guide to Gender Smart Investing, which was issued by the CDC Group and the IFC last year, proposes 5 commitment themes that financiers should work towards in order to enhance the funding environment for women entrepreneurs. And these are: 1, establishing a tone at the top with targets; 2, attracting and promoting female talent; 3, building respectful workplace cultures; 4, measuring and reporting on progress; and of course, committing publicly to gender diversity, as we're doing today. I'm pleased, ladies and gentlemen, to confirm that the IDC is at different stages of progress with implementing initiatives in support of these themes. For example, Program Director, specific targets for women funding were introduced in 2015. You only need to look at our board to know why this was important to us. This yielded an immediate impact with approximately 3 billion rands signed approvals against a target of 600 million in that particular year. Over the past 5 years, up to the financial results that we issued last week, the IDC committed cumulative funding of just under 12 billion rands to women entrepreneurs. And more than 90% of these investments were directed to Black women businesses. I won't talk about our teams. I'm sure you have interacted with us and you know where we stand in that regard. Our current loan book suggests an increasing, and this is very pleasing, increasing shift by women entrepreneurs towards owning larger businesses, as indicated by the significant rise in the proportion of women deals over 5 million rands. The average transaction size from women entrepreneurs at the moment stands at a pleasing 35 million rands. I'll leave our mandated sectors because we had a lot of input on that a little earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, we recognize that gender equity and economic inclusion of women and youth is among the key priority interventions envisaged in South Africa's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. The policy environment is therefore supportive for all funding institutions to pay particular attention to enhancing the funding environment for this attractive and soon to be fast-growing market segment. It makes economic and financial sense to do so. As I draw to a conclusion, allow me to highlight a few issues. First of all, the IDC is responsive to the needs of its clients insofar as structuring financing that provides grace periods, cash flow sensitive repayment plans, and the need for financial support to its business partners is concerned. Our post-unrest recovery facility, for example, blends grant funding with other forms of funding, such as debt and equity instruments, and these are all characteristics that are inherently conducive to supporting women entrepreneurs going forward. Despite our track record of support for women entrepreneurs, we'll be the first to acknowledge that a more systematic approach is required of us to support women entrepreneurs even more meaningfully, especially with the opportunities that have been presented here today. So what can we look forward to when we report to the Women's Economics Assembly this time next year, as Futi told me we'll be doing? First of all, management informs me that the corporation is in the process of developing a gender-specific, I'm not committing them, they informed me this, a gender-specific funding approach. This will include commitment to consistently meet targets relating to women enterprises and improving support to their business success through appropriate funding and non-financial support. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that there's an opportunity for us to innovate around products as well as methodologies. So this is something that I'm going to be actually rallying the board members to support me on. If one looks at funding rural business, for example, where the entrepreneur's property may therefore not have a title deed, as beautiful as those properties are, as we all know, I understand if a traditional bank cannot deal with this. However, should a DFI such as ourselves not be able to innovate on collateralization of such assets? I don't know. I'd like to table this. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, funding institutions operating in different segments of the investment opportunity spectrum should be able to share. I don't believe this would be any issue for the Competition Commissioner. Should be able to share deal opportunities that are not appropriate or not taken up by that particular funding institution. To be clear, there should be a more systematic approach to refer clients to the most likely funding institution as opposed to a cold decline. Our government has implemented wide-ranging programs that encourage and foster women entrepreneurship. Creating an effective funding environment for women will be a critical component to helping us advance inclusive transformation and economic growth, which are all integral to us as the IDC delivering on our mandate. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
I think I even heard a woohoo coming from the audience on the back of that. Thank you very much, Madame Busimabuza, the board chairperson of the IDC. I will not even attempt to paraphrase other than to say, gender-smart financing that meets entrepreneurs at the bleeding edge of their business life cycle. Now, if you're not tweeting that and sharing that with the country, the continent, the world, I'm not sure the messaging that we're sending through, but certainly that was very inspirational. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when President Ramaphosa started, he said, I want to hear commitments, I want to hear practical actions, and I think the president is now ready to share his reflection with us on what he's heard and whether we've convinced him that we're not talking about 2 or 4 cylinders, but certainly 8 cylinders, and that we are looking to move at full throttle, I think was the language the president used. So, Your Excellency, the floor is yours once again to reflect on what you've heard. Ladies and gentlemen, please.
I've now learned how to take this off and how to put it on. You know, sometimes you learn the hard way. But I saw a few people getting off the stage struggling. They were not laughed at. I was laughed at. Moderator and honorable ministers, heads of various institutions, both government as well as business, and all the other representatives. I've listened rather very attentively to what South Africa's industry leaders, as well as leaders of SOEs and government, have had to say. I'm delighted to hear about the excellent work each of the various people who spoke here representing their institutions, about what they are already doing and what they are also going to be doing, it tells me that there is movement. There is movement, and all we should now seek to do is to add momentum, add real momentum to what we are already doing and what we are going to be doing. Most industry bodies here and associations recognize the need as well as the importance of economic benefits of women's participation. We are no longer talking about the need or not the need of including women in the economy. It's a given. That is a given. That it no longer needs debate. It no longer needs discussion even. And it must be a default position at all times. And it's good that there's been agitation, there's been insistence, there's been talk, and the raising of consciousness and awareness. Paying dividends, well, it is paying something that gives us great attention and enables us to do something about it. The dividends we will see later. The strategies to include women-owned businesses and women in various sectors of our economy, value chains or supply chains, is now a matter of just giving full effect to it. Those industry bodies that spoke here that have already started moving forward, we want to encourage them to move even faster, to even be bolder, and to implement the plans that they spoke so glowingly about here. However, there are those that have not yet done anything about developing any gender transformation strategies, and we would like them to start and begin to craft those strategies and to develop even pilot moments or initiatives, and thereafter proceed to implementation. Now, I'm not going to be able to speak on each because I was hugely impressed with what I heard here today. And I'll just single out a few of those that come really to mind. And I'd like to applaud the action plan by the Sugar Transformation Fund, because you spoke about a figure that rang music in my ears, to invest 200 million annually in transformation initiatives or in interventions. That is fantastic. I am also encouraged by the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund that is looking at a minimum of 30% funding allocation to women-owned businesses in component manufacturing. Now, what is this going to mean? It's going to mean that as I get into my car, I will now know that you contributed to the making of the various components in the car, the seats, the carpet in the car. Not only that, but the hardcore other parts, the carburetor, and a whole lot of other things. You will have contributed to enable women-led businesses to make the carburetor of my car. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And also encourage the women to also get into dealerships and to also have authorized repair facilities that are women-led. As I told you, women are now getting into all manner of businesses, all manner of endeavors in society. Our women are getting into. Let us empower them and let us enable them to do so. This will undoubtedly promote our efforts to also localize industry and increase our production capacity in manufacturing. Now, one of the areas that has really gone down in terms of contribution to our GDP is manufacturing. We need to re-industrialize our country. We need to reboot our manufacturing capability and what with the automotive sector, the sugar sector, agriculture, going to be able to fund women and empower them and enable them to get into this. I encourage boldness. I encourage massifying what we need to do. Don't do one and think that you've done enough. Do as many as possible so that we are able to spawn as many women-led businesses as we possibly can. The Women Economic Assembly Planning Committee has clearly stated the need for an ecosystem to support the participation of women. And this, in my view, is important. For instance, across the agricultural value chain, direct investment should be targeted micro-production sites, processing plants, distribution facilities, and enable women to process their goods as well as their markets. So that ecosystem needs to be created, to be built, and to come into life. And such facilities would benefit women in a number of other sectors, in sugar, in poultry, in cotton, and just to name but a few. And this could be opening channels of partnership and collaboration and cooperation between the private sector and the public sector. And this is where the intersection, a wonderful intersection, could happen. And I'd like to encourage Agri-SA, working with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, to explore this strategy and to help develop a model that can work for the South African context. Another area that I hear from the industry is targeted training and skills development. Now, these are non-financial areas that my sister, Ms. Mabuza, was talking about. We must now shift from general training to industry-specific training needs. If we want our economy really to take off, let us be focused in our training. Let us train our young people in a focused manner so that they are able to acquire skills that will enable them to be more employable. Whatever those skills are, however they can be acquired. And sometimes we think that the skill must be acquired either at university or at a TVET college. And if as employers we are able to craft really good courses and package them and do on-the-job training, and do what the Germans have done to good effect. And what the Germans have done is also spreading to a number of countries. This training on the job and experiential training, where we should have, yes, the academic, and balance that with on-the-job training to chisel into shape the skills that our young people should be getting and have that balance of work and academic learning. For instance, women in the energy sector have already indicated the need for a South African energy training center or an incubator. And that already shows that the hunger for skills is deep, and that is the one that we need to address. Likewise, women in the automotive sector have said that their skills have to do with the technical know-how of manufacturing automobiles and also running dealerships. Therefore, I think this is a great start, a particularly great start. And what you are doing today here is also going to allow others to emulate what is being done here. For instance, to hear a body like the Southern African Stainless Steel Development Association identifying training, mentorship, and capacity building as a core intervention. Before today, I had never heard of this association, but I heard how progressive they are, how forward-looking they are. It basically means that They can be a trailblazer. They will be able to show the other associations how all this can be done. Because this training should aim to develop women and young people with a particular interest and expertise in steel manufacturing, as my sister was saying here earlier. Some policy areas have also been identified as needing attention in what was being said here. Our Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has spoken about the great initiative to provide opportunities for new entrants in renewable energy and launch the Women Empowerment Gender Equality Strategy. Now, that too, at a government department level, demonstrates real progress. And as Minister Nkwana Mashabane and her department have continued to preach the message about the empowerment of women, the message is sinking in deeper and deeper in various levels of government, and it is being absorbed, and it is beginning to turn into the real action that needs to be taken on an ongoing basis. We also need to consider matters related to industry charter and adaptations in our procurement systems. I would also like to highlight a few additional points that will be important as we embark on this journey. We are committed at government level to ensuring that our preferential procurement target of 40% towards women empowerment is reached within the public sector. Now, we announced this. Now, it is going to gain traction. It was important that we should set a target. And having set that target, we are priming various departments in government now to be much more aware that as we procure, we've got to ask ourselves, are we procuring this from women-led businesses? But more importantly, are we going to go out there and support and help women-led businesses to be in a position where they can take advantage of the empowerment and procurement opportunities? And this is where the real empowerment, and this is a path that is also strewn with a number of risks, because where there is laziness, there may be ways of cheating. And this is where we will be watching the process like hawks to make sure that the empowerment that is enabled or that is delivered to women is real empowerment. And it should not be fly by night. It should not be fronting. It should be the real empowerment of the women of our country, without any doubt. We will therefore continue to implement this program, and we want to see it growing and growing in strength. In the second session, I'm told, you will hear about the tangible interventions and initiatives. The work that the Women Economic Assembly team has started comes at an important time when we need to move with greater urgency and with purpose to address, yes, the aftermath of COVID-19, to address the poverty that continues in our country, the unemployment and the inequality. The task that you have now taken on is a huge task, but it is a collective task. All of us must get involved in addressing this task. We must remember that these interventions, if well implemented, will directly and positively impact on the lives of women and men in South Africa through job creation. Therefore, we must be encouraged to take bold action towards transformation and use it as a lever to expand, yes, our manufacturing base, to expand our economic growth. I am grateful that the co-chairs of the Women Economic Assembly have taken this initiative, but I also want to thank them for the leadership that they have shown in bringing this initiative to reality. I'd like to applaud you and thank you for having had that foresight. I am honored, really, to sit here today with the formidable and visionary women of the NSP Pillar 5 who have been working tirelessly to achieve this result. I also would like to say, for me, it's a great pleasure to have sat here in the presence of Usisi Zanele Mbeki, a trailblazer in the empowerment of women in our country. Not only the empowerment of women, but the financing of women business and ordinary women at the bottom there. She has shown that it can be done, and she has demonstrated to all of us that women are not only great business leaders, but they pay their debts, they pay their loans. So if you are a financier, give money to women, they will return it manifold. I want to congratulate the leaders of industry and heads of government departments for the excellent work that you have done so far. And I look forward to seeing the impact of the progress that you have made. The South Africa that we aim to build in the end is a South Africa that is marked by resilience, the resilience of its people. It is also marked by the commitment that the people of South Africa have always demonstrated. But it is also marked by the innovation that we always demonstrate. When my sister, Ms. Mabuza, was speaking here and talking about how she's going to try and convince her board to craft various innovative ways of collateralizing debt and all that, or assets, I said, here is an innovator. Women are great innovators, and it is good. It is good that we should do so, and to hear a head of a development financial institution like the IDC speaking in those terms means that we are indeed, even at the public sector level, taking the empowerment of women quite seriously. And in this administration and this government, the empowerment of women is one of the key priorities, because I am convinced that if we really want to see our economy growing, we should be empowering the women of our country. And thank you very much that this initiative has demonstrated that if we massify what we are doing, indeed, we can do a lot more than what has been done in the past. Let's get on with it and empower the women of our country. I left the note, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Ramaphosa has spoken, so I'm going to capture his words in a series of M's that I heard him use. He spoke about movement. He spoke about momentum. He spoke about massifying. He spoke about money. He spoke about markets. And he even invited us to rethink our mindsets. So, ladies and gentlemen, as the President has reflected back to us what he's hearing, he's also invited us, as we go into our second session, to not lose sight of the big picture. A South Africa that is resilient, that is innovative, and that is inclusive. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask for your forgiveness in advance. I know that we have gone over time, and I know that this is really a reflection of how important this conversation is that we're having today. And so as I call up our ministerial dialogue panelists and participants, I ask that you bear with us. It's my pleasure to welcome back onto the stage Minister Maite Nkwane Mashabane. She will lead us by setting some framing remarks for this ministerial dialogue. Joining her on stage is Minister Ibrahim Patel, our Minister for Trade, Industry and Competition. Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, our Minister for Small Business Development. Minister Togo Didiza, our Minister for Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Mr. Bonang Mohale, the President of Business Unity South Africa. Dr. Sizega Rensburg, once again, who of course we know is the chairperson of the AITF. Mr. Kuseni Dlamini, the chairperson of Massmart. I'm going to ask our panelists to kindly please join me up on stage, if we can give them a round of applause. I've had a quick request. Can I kindly request all the speakers to please make their way onto the stage? I've been told that there's a quick photograph that's going to be taken with His Excellency, and it's going to take all of 5 seconds. So if I can ask all the speakers who have spoken to kindly please make their way. If you can, ladies and gentlemen, I do see that the President is departing, so maybe let's please be rising as he departs and give him the acknowledgement and a round of applause. Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, as you resume your seats, we're going to resume with the second session. Thank you very much for your patience. And Minister Maite Nkwane Mashabane is standing by to offer some framing remarks, after which we'll get straight into the panel discussion. Might I invite you, if you are in our online audience, to take this opportunity to send us a question or a comment, and we'll try and integrate 1 or 2 voices into the conversation. Minister, it's over to you.
So I'll hear from you if there's a question. Yes. So I'll take it there. Take it that there's none, because I didn't see the signal. Okay. Fellow panelists, respected members of this inaugural assembly, a beautiful assembly that respects women in the true sense, and also give voice and reason to NSP, particularly Pillar 5, but also reminds all of us, particularly you contributors, you owners of Pillar 5, that our president is a member of Generation Equality. So we will not go to these gatherings barehanded, but also we will also not be going with fly-by-night or with just speeches. Chairperson Mabuza, you have made our day. You have made the launch a memorable occasion. It is true that, or maybe, making all female ministers here and panelists, I'm sure your hearts are filled with joy and you almost joined me in saying Malibongwe. Hearing the name of Cezanne, because I didn't turn my head since I sat here, I remember that I now have an opportunity to tell you that since that journey to Bangladesh, one of our delegates had carried a 6-month-old baby. That baby is at vets and is taking engineering serious. I don't have time to go back to that journey, but when I see you every day and I finally end up where I am, and saw how almost near nothing was happening except speeches as far as empowerment of women were concerned, until President Ramaphosa arrived. Let's tell the truth. It makes this launch of Women Economic Assembly exciting. In the department we lead, when I learned that, it was almost like it's a department where you mustn't do anything except talk about how women are killed. It was like a department of gender-based violence and femicide. Today, I'm sure all women of South Africa, panelists and members of this assembly or participants can join us when we say Pillar 5 helps us turn the corner. But for those who have made nice speeches, I'm sorry, this is Maite. But real stuff doesn't happen on the ground. We will be visiting. So the nice things that we have had today, we will be expecting to hear. It's not arrogance, it's advocacy that says we must do exactly that which President Ramaphosa says we must do. But congratulate those who are taking this empowerment of women serious. Because indeed, as we emerge, someday we're going to emerge out of COVID-19. It should be that we are getting into a real new South Africa that also doesn't see women as playthings or things to kill, but business partners, potentials. I think after having listened to you speak and listening to the president speak, and also hearing that DTIC, I always, because I know you a lot, didn't believe that these things are happening. I am very happy that through Pillar 5, you and I can go for tea, Minister Patel, and go see that indeed women can make a difference and be partners in still making. That IDC can indeed empower women. I am a believer in seeing things and also encouraging that more and more should be coming through. When President, His Excellency Ramaphosa, 3 years ago said, let's adopt that plan, it was like it wasn't going to happen. When we finally got into the space we are in now, where we said we will find a way that women are really empowered through, remember that in August 9th this year, we launched, or he launched, the NSP. But launching the NSP was nice. It was 1 year later after their adoption. But moving into saying, we've heard that he said 40% of procurement in government should go to women, and indeed, I was almost getting a little bit impatient, but I'm slowing down because I heard he's like, it's okay. We have started 9% in some areas. In some areas, Minister of Agriculture, 14%, not too bad. But we are on a journey. We are on a journey that needs 40%. And I trust you. I know you from somewhere. So I think this is possible. This country has a constitution. The constitution says South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And the president of South Africa says women make 52% of that South Africa. So it's not asking for too much. When we say, when we come out of the vulnerability of COVID-19, let's make the Constitution of South Africa live in our veins. Let's remember that the department we lead has women, youth, and disabled people. It is like a department of all the vulnerable people you have in South Africa. That's where we live. And we need to really feel fully covered. I mean, not me. I mean the people we serve. The people you, I believe, are launching this assembly for should feel that indeed South Africa belongs to all of them. We don't have time, but we have the commitment that we need to provide decent work, economic inclusivity, productive resources to all South Africans who should be feeling this belongs to all of us because we live in it. I am also delighted that when you talk about, President spoke about access to information. You cannot be the leader of generation equality and we do not understand what access to information, access to finance mean. How can you have access to finance when you do not have access to information on how to get things done? How can you participate in real South African business when real roots of doing business do not give you the information you need? The information to start a business, the information to not just go to vets and then acquire a degree, but have a TVET that is like the TVETs I saw in Malaysia, like the TVETs that Malaysians saw from the Germans, and that we indeed make our people feel they are not only wanted, but that they own this South Africa. The gender framework, monitoring, evaluating, and auditing needs to be alive. It's going to be alive because you care. I need to be sensitive to time because this panel is quite generous with information. It shouldn't be that I took all the time because I need all these panelists' help. I need their help. I need your help. We need your intervention to make South Africa a place that we all want to live in and not run away from. This is a beautiful country. I also need to do a bit of listening on the how, because the how you should do it, President has elaborated. Now, we are going into the details of how we are going to implement more, not the 9%. 9%, 13%, okay. But we have made, through the NSP, real commitments, and President had even spoken to some of them in 1 or 2, if not 3, of his States of the Nation address. So we have very little time, a lot to talk about, but talking, some of us are reaching retirement. Talking, we are doing it, it's nice, but can we also see more and more of action? Action, 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 and we will follow.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think has certainly given us the baton. She's called for action, action, and more action. She's called for accountability, and she's called on us to focus on the how. So as we get into this panel discussion, really the big framing question for all of our panelists is how do we do more? And secondly, what are the practical actions that might be taken to translate commitment to practical outcome on the ground? And so maybe, Minister Patel, I'll kick off with you, because we do know that reboosting an economy in a society that has some legacy challenges, that has deep levels of inequality, that hasn't been spared the impacts of COVID-19, requires extraordinary measures. And so as you reflect on those big questions, what are the extraordinary policy responses that are going to deliver the outcomes that we're looking for and really create the environment that allows those commitments to become outcomes on the ground? To you, Minister.
Well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to reflect on that question. And my greetings to all the members of the audience and fellow panelists. I would summarize what we need to do in 2 broad categories. The first is to create an environment for growth, and then to have policies that deepen inclusion, particularly in this instance focusing on gender mainstreaming. So at the level of the environment for growth, where would growth come from? There's on the demand side, because ultimately all growth is about producing more widgets, more products and so on, that someone buys, and producing it in a way that is competitive, efficient, and so on. So on the demand side, our focus now is on deepening localization in our economy. If you look at South Africa's non-oil import bill just before COVID, it was 1.1 trillion rand. That represents an enormous opportunity. Now, in every society, in any modern economy, you need to be able to import product, but the level of import is out of line with both our development needs and that of the rest of the world. Look at our import bill as a percentage of GDP. It's about of the order of 25%. For the European Union and the United States, it varies between 12 and 14%. For our BRICS peers from India, China, Russia, and Brazil, it ranges from about 9% to 16%. We're about 25%. So that's an opportunity to try to get more traction in our economy. And later on, some of the panelists will give some practical examples, I hope, like Kuseni, about what we've done together with Walmart to deepen localization in the South African economy. The other part, at the big level, is to widen and deepen our market. And we do that through expanding the African market, through the African Continental Free Trade Area, potentially 1.2 billion consumers, and that represents economic opportunity. And the other part of it is when we fight poverty, when we bring more people into employment, when we address inequality issues, we deepen our market. And so those would be on the demand side. On the supply side, it's the practical things that a number of panelists and people have spoken about. Making finance available, supporting supply chain development, having procurement policies, bringing in training, all of what has been done. And I want to give the example perhaps of any of the sectors, and a number of the sectors have been mentioned. So we take the clothing industry as one example. It's a majority female industry measured by workforce. It's an industry that has gone through enormous pressures with a loss of output and jobs and investment, principally because product has been displaced by products made elsewhere in the world. So there you need a competitiveness program that changes the dynamic of the industry, that focuses on opportunities for jobs. So the master plan we've put together does exactly that. It says to the retail sector, how do we enter into a partnership to buy more from South African producers? It says to the producers, how do you make your product more efficiently? And it says to workers, how do we deal with both the equity issues that workers raise, but also improve the output per worker in that sector? That's what the master plan is about. So to bring all of that together, what government has done then in the master plan, we've taken the incentive program of the DTIC, and we've given it a particular gender angle or twist. So we've said now, for women to start enterprises, they need capital equipment. So there's now a program that's specifically geared, that gives additional incentive to women-owned enterprises for capital equipment. But you also need working capital. You need to be able to buy your fabric, you need to pay your workers until you get payments from the retailers. So there's a working capital facility that is available that is sweetened or strengthened or made more concessionary for women. So I give that as one example on the ownership. The other part of it, though, is to deal with jobs, because when that sector grows, the number of women in jobs and in manufacturing jobs grow, and the number of women in skilled work grows. And then the final part of the clothing and textile story is, as we marry better South African fashion with South African manufacturing capability, and you have fantastic clothing, I hope the beautiful outfits everybody's wearing here is locally made. Confessions would be welcome now, Kuseni. And if you need a tailor that's a South African tailor, and you need a South African woman to make fantastic clothing, I can introduce you. But it's those kind of micro decisions. So big picture, create the environment on the demand and supply side, and then specifically have incentive and other programs in which you you deal with all the challenges of women in business and allow women to flourish. But then also don't forget women workers.
Yes.
So in the clothing industry, final point here is women are earning, if you are a machinist, so this is not an unskilled job. Your starting wage would be something of the order of 4,500 rand per month. Your qualified rate, when you've gone through all the training, you can do the job at the level required, would be about 4,800 rand per month. Now that you can't feed a family, and many of those workers are the sole breadwinners. So you also have to find ways in which you bring dignity and decency into the work environment as you build productivity and efficiency and competitiveness. It's trying to find a way in which all of this comes together. So I hope in a couple of minutes I've been able to sketch some elements of how one goes about this from a Department of Trade, Industry and Competition point of view.
Minister Patel, I think it's an excellent answer. You've given us the big picture, but you've also given us examples of the nuance at the practical level, and you've given us both sides, supply and demand, and how these two come together. But maybe let me jump all the way to the other side of the room and go to Minister Ndabeni-Abrahams, because listening to Minister Patel, one gets quite excited, and then the question that plays at the back of the mind is, how do we ensure that we are not leaving women in the small business space behind? So to you, Minister, the question remains the same. How do we do more for women in the small business space, and how do we make sure that we're not having a conversation at commitment level and it's actually translated into practical outcomes on the ground?
Thank you so much, moderator, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists and everyone here. Of course, the critical thing that was highlighted by many speakers even here, the fact that we need to focus also on the non-financial support that we have to really provide towards women. But as we do that, we shouldn't just do it for the sake of doing it. It means we need to understand what are the critical areas of growth or sectors that are driving growth, and not just plunge women into businesses that are saturated already. Therefore, the first thing to do is to ensure that, as we have defined in the Economic Recovery Plan, we therefore identify the critical growth sectors and say, we deliberate in this instance to say, in this sector, we want to produce 40% of women entrepreneurs. And we believe that's the only way that will help not only deal with gender issues in terms of the economy that we are faced with, but also the transformation side, which is very clearly articulated in the National Development Plan in terms of what is it that we're expected to do. As we all talk about the inclusion and everything, women have to be exposed. And if we are not deliberate on that, my fellow panelists, it means we're going to fail. We can't be wanting to say women businesses must go and compete before we give them that exposure so that they can also take comfort, without saying women are not capable of doing that. But there's various forms of exposure, including the job experience that President was talking about. So that's the first thing that we think is very important. And of course, is to say, as women by nature, they are nurturers. How do we make sure that we identify pioneers? Because we may want to massify, but we have to build a crop that must be able to mentor others. And the most important thing is that collaboration between the small businesses and the big businesses. This is why with Minister Patel, we agree that it's very important that we work together, because we are siblings. And if we are siblings, we've got to plead with the big brothers and sisters to say, as you grow higher, please make sure that you lift us up. And the only way to do that, as I spoke about, the non-financial support that we must provide, then we bring in the resources wherein, of course, we're still dealing with those issues of the numbers. We are able to refer to Minister Patel to say, through IDC and others, how do we make sure that we provide, including that collateral that was spoken about. We're reaching out to big businesses, including financiers, to say, how do we work together? But all of this, moderator, again, requires us to work together. It's a collaborative effort.
Yes.
We're not going to achieve anything, including the challenges that we're talking about today. We're complaining of unemployment rate, we're complaining about a slow growth of economy, all because we've not invested much in the small businesses. Because we know very well that if we invest much on small businesses, those things will be dealt with. Because we have areas that employ lots of people. If you go to the agricultural sector, if you go to the automotive, if you go to the digital space, those are all the industries that can bring on lots of people. I know when people talk about the technology space, they tend to think that it's replacing, but there's lots of new jobs that are created, which is why, again, working with the Minister of Science and Innovation, Higher Education, Science and Innovation, is to say, how do we make sure that we work together to produce the relevant skills in terms of academics, but build more on the artisans that we have not paid attention to. This economy requires people who are skilled, not certificated.
Right.
Therefore, that's why it's important to bring all the critical players on board and make sure that you work with others. Minister Patel talks about the master plans that have been developed. And we have taken a conscious and to say, working with the industry players, when we develop our own master plan that has been rejected in cabinet, we have to make sure that we first scrutinize the existing master plans to say, where is the share for small businesses?
Yes.
And when we talk about the share, we're not referring to the 30% that government talks about. We want a product-based procurement that must target to say, in the infrastructure rollout and the budgets that have been set aside, if you're talking about the build industry, how do we make sure that women own the cement factories and they produce that? The quarries that we're talking about from the Department of Mineral Resources, the automotive industry, President makes reference to the issue of the seats. Minister Tokodidiza is here to say, we are one country that is very big on livestock. I mean, like I come from a province where we slaughter a cow is as long as you die and we celebrate. But what do we do with the skin of that?
Yeah.
At what stage do we bring all of those to say, let's invest in tannery, let's train young people and women, let's make sure that we engage BMW, we engage Mercedes-Benz and others to make sure that we provide them with the leather seats that they need. So these are all the initiatives that we are saying, we have to be deliberate on them to say, we don't want everything.
Right.
We just want to focus on 10, and out of the 10, make sure that 40% is women-led whilst we bring in young people.
Minister Ndabeni Abrams, I think it's a really great answer that actually pulls in a couple of the threads that Minister Patel had started off with. And I maybe just want to build on this a little bit by bringing in a different voice and maybe to go to Mr. Mohale with this voice. Mr. Mohale, we've heard about, you know, at a macro level, looking at policies of localization as an example. We're hearing Minister Ndabeni Abrams saying, look, let's not leave small business behind. Let's interrogate all of the master plans. Let's be courageous about asking the question of, you know, where is the allocation for small business? The question I'd like to bring to you, sir, is that having listened to all of that, again, from a business perspective, what more can be done? Two, Minister Ndabeni Abrams spoke about siblings. I'd like to make you a cousin as part of that family. And to extend the question to you, what is the role of the cousin in making sure that this multi-stakeholder approach works? And if you could also maybe just comment on the regional and continental opportunities that I know that Minister Patel had begun to touch on. Over to you, Mr. Mohale.
So creativity is thinking new things. Innovation is doing new things. So in business, we'd like to set women up for success. The same way that false gas was set up for success. False gas could have never failed even if it tried hard. Because the apartheid government, what they did, they said, this is the bank for our people, hence default. Then they ensured that every single solitary one of the government employees gets paid with a false gas check.
Yes.
If you take it to a false gas bank, you get paid instantaneously. You take it to another commercial bank, you have to wait 15 days. Every person that went to the army, because we had conscription in those days, was paid their stipend with a false gas check. So when you have a paper, naturally you go and open an account in that bank. Lastly, in the 4 provinces at that time, every single solitary one of the major airports, the only bank that could trade in foreign exchange was false gas. Here we are, 27 years into democracy, a people with great natural endowments, with more justification of how we need to catch up. With 52% of the population being women, I'm a product of women. I'm surrounded by 3 women, my lovely wife, Susan, and 2 divine daughters. And the one thing that practically we can do is, at the moment, the South African Reserve Bank is saying we own 50% of the African bank. This bank that was formed by Dr. Sam Mutswenyane, took them 10 years to raise R1 million. By the time they started, it was 15 million rand. The apartheid government took it away from them by increasing the capital adequacy requirement. It then fails in the hands of the usual suspect. We're not thinking critically about what we can do about this bank, where we took 10 billion rand to recapitalize with 5 major commercial banks. Now we are told this 50% stake, they're going on a beauty parade show. What stops us from taking this bank and giving it back to the oldest black organization in existence called NAFCOC? And as government, give them vendor finance through our developmental finance institutions. When we can't, we then say commercial banks come into the party and help us. What they're looking for at the moment, for the 15 of the 50% stake owned by the South African Reserve Bank, after that initial 8 billion rand, which was working capital, it's 750 million rand. That's what they're looking for. Now, I don't know many of my cousins who are walking around with 30 million rand. So those are really the practical things that we can do. Here's the last one, because you asked 3 questions. But also, we wanting to do this at the time when we are in a space of border as a country. 5 things that are self-inflicted harm. We thought we were just put down the 9 years, 9 wasted years of state capture. Then the recession hit us. As if it's not enough, Moody's downgraded us. So by the time the pandemic found us, we were prostrate, face down, and already finished. Very few countries in the world will be able to survive just one of those calamities. With us, we are doing it concurrently, simultaneously, and in parallel. As if it's not enough, we then laid a 5th layer on those 2 weeks in July. When you take a tally of what we had done on the 19th of July, most of the businesses that were disseminated and absolutely killed belonged to women. Because when you go to every shopping center, every mall, 90% of the tenants are small and medium enterprises. And that's where I think we should really be focusing. So whilst politics determines economics, in the private sector, before the COVID, we were employing 16.5 million people, when government employed 2.3 billion people in all 3 layers of government. So in the small shop that I ran, the Bidvest Group Limited Bank, for the first time in 32 years, we are well led by Sis Nompumelelo Tembekile Madisa. Within 1 year of her taking up, 80% of the board is black and 70% is women.
Mr. Mahale, thank you very much for those reflections. I'm going to maybe try and build onto it by going to Dr. Rensburg as the next voice. Dr. Rensburg, we heard you earlier on in the podium. We heard the commitment, we heard the numbers, and we heard the mandate of the fund. The question that I'd really like to bring to you is, what is one decisive action that we can expect? And I'm tapping into accountability that was shared here by Minister Nkwane Mashabane. 1 year from now, when we're reporting back to the co-chairs, what is going to be the headline that the AITF is going to be reporting on? What is the decisive action you would have been haven't taken between now and then that is going to bring you a step closer to the commitments you spoke about?
Thank you very much, facilitator and fellow panelists. I did allude in my presentation that we are looking at 30%, coming up saying 30% of our funding has gone to women. Now, when you think of that 30%, here's the most powerful side to think about. The 225 million that I mentioned that is facilitated to a business with one of the OEMs and is 30% owned by a woman is less than 1% of the access to market. Now, access to market is guaranteed business with an OEM. It's less than 1% of what we've already facilitated. So once we say we've funded 30% to women, you are talking many billions that will come out of that. So for us, and this is a very powerful model of a development finance institution, because we do not give you money and you don't have a business. We give you money and you have a contract with an OEM, and most of the OEMs, in terms of their work, that contract would never be less than 3 years. Usually, when they develop the new cars, it's about 7 years to 10 years. So if you actually get the funding and with the contract from the OEM, you actually are in business, guaranteed business for a number of years. So for us, it's very impactful. We will be bringing women who actually have those kinds of contracts and are involved, not just in the byproducts, but they're involved in the core products. As mentioned earlier, localization offers us huge opportunity as South Africa. And in the automotive industry, there's already a commitment facilitated and supported by the DTIC. There's already a commitment in terms of what this localization is going to look like. Now, women have to be part of that. And as my colleague, Peter, mentioned earlier on, the work stream that's looking at the transformation has already committed to actually a target for gender in terms of that. However, I think that they're still working on what the percentage would be. And I think that Peter will come up and say, this is the percentage, and this, hopefully we will have achieved part of that percentage next year.
Dr. Rensburg, it's a fantastic answer, and of course it brings to mind the reality is that, you know, one of the first targets that Madam Toba put to us, she says, increase the number of women in the sector. And so we need to begin to think not only about how do we share the pie for existing players, but how do we grow the pie so that more women are, and it's really encouraging to hear your responses. I'd like to go to Minister Didiza next. Minister, I'm going to quote something that you've recently said, and you said, empowering women in agriculture is important if we want to ensure economic inclusion and strengthen food security in this country. Unquote. Those are your comments from last week. Minister just gave me a look to say, I don't remember that. Your comments from, but quite apt, Minister, in light of what we were hearing here today. The question remains the same to you, is to say, it's a beautiful vision where we see women not just as growers on the farms or smallholder farms, but how do we ensure that they are deliberately moving up the value chain and they are producers and they're in logistics and they're distributing, they're in the marketing space? What are some of the practical actions that we're going to have to look for?
Thank you very much to you and fellow panelists, as well as the participants in this platform. Maybe I must start by bragging that in terms of the 40% procurement by departments, Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, this commitment we've met already, 46%. 46%. 46%. And I think it's important to indicate that in the agriculture, land reform and rural development space, your professional services are on built environment where you need surveyors, contracting, particularly where you build rural infrastructure, consulting services, particularly legal and finance. And we have been deliberate that in the starting year after President's announcement, we will meet the target, and we have. But we want to sustain it because it is important and a conscious decision that we must make from time to time when we look at our procurement spend as government. If you look at the Stats SA report about the agricultural sector and how many farm units we have in this country, it's about 40,000 plus. And 16% of that is women-owned. It's not a big number. And in response, we've decided from a policy perspective that any land acquisition and access that government must procure, 50% of that is women. So we're not just making it as a policy, but we're also saying in the land reform budget, we will make sure that we make a split deliberately, so that it's not by accident that we achieve that 50%. With regards to the poultry master plan, I thought my brother will mention that as well as Busi, because beyond the master plan, one of the things we realized was that if you don't deal with the funding element, those figures in terms of how much we need to increase our production in the poultry industry will fall flat. So we syndicated between IDC and agriculture. We put the money into it for a period of 5 years, R1 billion, to make sure that we have a blended finance of grant and loan. I still need to teach a little bit my IDC friends on what are the things that matter, and I'm happy the chairperson understands it in the agricultural sector, which are non-financial, because this is where we've had a fight after 3 months of assessing how they are funding from that fund. But it's important because we need to learn together. What are those things that matter? One of the things we've done is that we've seen that there are many women producers who are owners, particularly on primary production. If you look at your subsistence farmers, you have got about 2.3 million producers, and almost 34% of that is women. But most of the time, it is that non-financial and financial support that they require. So working with the Food and Agriculture Organization, UN Women, and the presidency, we've decided that we're going to have a Women in Agriculture Agribusiness Mentorship Program, so that it's not by accident that you catch women, but we make it as a deliberate program to massify those numbers, to sort of identify various sectors where you find women. In the grains, a lot of women, you'll find them in maize, sorghum, as well as soybean, for instance. In the livestock industry, it's your small ruminants, which is your sheep and your goats. Well, there are women who are farming with cattle, but you'll find that a majority of women will be in the sheep and the goat production and poultry. So we said we will deliberately look at those sectors and how we support those women to grow. And at the second level, we're working with your goods consumer council in the retail sector on the offtake from those producers, working also with the Department of Small and Medium Enterprises as to how do we support those small women who are already in the sector, promoting food security, but also wanting to grow, so that it's not, again, by mistake, but it's deliberate. And I must thank IDC, particularly Chairperson, that we need to start to deal with tenure security in South Africa in a multiplicity of ways, not only freehold and say that's what you can collectorize. Customary tenure in South Africa is embedded. And I think though we see it as having weaknesses in terms of collateral, it has actually saved more people from being landless.
Yes.
So how do we make sure that that tenure security system is codified in law, and that's what we're doing now in terms of legislation and policy, but at the same time, how do we become creative in making sure that that is bankable? And actually, I have been trying to look at Whiphold, Louisa, and Tomato. They've actually proven the odds that you can invest in rural areas in that so-called insecure tenure system.
Yeah.
You go to Qendane today, it has changed the landscape. And Whiphold made the investment there, and they've already syndicated with some other businesses, such as Afgri, and it's showing that it can be done. The issue mentioned by Agri-SA, one of the things that can be a facilitator in improving women's access in agriculture and agribusiness is infrastructure. If I farm in a rural area with bad roads, particularly tomato, then by the time it reaches the market, it's tomato sauce. By default, not what I want to. So that is important. Cotton ginnery, which is what was mentioned. it actually makes sure that you lessen the distance from production to the market.
Yeah.
But also you do the localization that Minister Patel is talking about. Instead of sending that cotton as is, you already start to add value through the cotton ginnery, and you can then add with spinning and coming up with the textile at the end. So agricultural infrastructure and agro-logistics becomes an enabler for women's success in agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. I just want to read a comment, which I think really speaks to the comments you've just made, Minister. A comment from Tandiwe Lakopa. Tandiwe says, how will rural young women excel in agriculture enterprise development without land and controlling inputs, which I think you've addressed, Minister, to say it is on the agenda, it is on focus. Tandiwe goes on to say, we missed the deadline for land application because of access to technology and electricity load shedding. White farmers around our area impound livestock because they have sufficient feeds and refuse to sell livestock farmers communal land. Again, Minister, you spoke about infrastructure as one of the most important things, and just to maybe just raise that through the comments. So let me then go to Mr. Dlamini as we begin to wrap up our conversation. Goes on to the Massmart website, they find that you have a Women in Leadership Council that really is a reflection of your commitment to women within the organization. Outside of the workforce, how is Massmart contributing to the efforts of integrating women into the supply chain, into the supplies that are coming in to Massmart? Your comments on that, and what more can we expect from Massmart in that regard?
Thank you very much, Program Director, and thank you to the co-chairs of the Women's Economic Assembly and to the honorable ministers that are here. It's a great honor to be here. At Massmart, we have a supplier development program, which I'm very pleased to say to Ms. Mtoba that it is gender inclusive and gender proactive, in the sense that through the engagement we've had with Minister Patel, we're very deliberate about promoting and supporting women-owned businesses and youth-owned businesses. We've got a three-pronged strategy that we're following, which is about improving and maximizing local procurement. And through that, we have worked together with DTIC to identify suppliers locally that needed our support, and we have gone out there to be able to assist them. We've got a dedicated team of experts that are out there to work in partnership with all the suppliers that need our help. How do we help the suppliers? We help them through funding, and we also help them through providing industrial engineering expertise when it's required. One of the challenges that suppliers face is meeting the quality standards that we set. And that's one thing that I get calls on as chairman of the business from various suppliers. We realize that without investing in industrial engineering capabilities and capacity, we cannot be able to assist them. So we have a dedicated industrial engineering core that we deploy to partner with our suppliers and help them improve operational efficiencies, help them improve productivity, and also help them improve financial performance. So that is something that is important. The other key challenge that suppliers face is access to our buyers. They always find that our buyers are inaccessible, and that's a problem that is recurring. One of the things that we are very pleased to announce today is that we will be setting up a merchant liaising office so that women-owned businesses and small suppliers who are struggling to access our buyers will have a one point of contact, and they'll be able to work with people who know and understand our business, and we will give them access to the buyers that they need to have access to. One of the problems with buyers is that they tend to have historic relationships with certain suppliers, and it's very difficult to extricate them from those relationships. So we want to prepare our suppliers for those meetings with the buyers and also give them access to that. We're very pleased that through the work that we have done in terms of supporting suppliers, last year we reached a milestone of 1 billion rand procurement from small and medium enterprises that are supported by our supplier development program, which we've been running with the support and encouragement of Minister Patel, who's next to me. That is outside of the 3 billion rand that we procured from small and medium enterprises that are outside of the supplier development program. And as far as women enterprises are concerned, I'm very pleased to share with you that last year we procured 8 billion rand worth of goods from companies that are 30% female-owned. And we're looking at building on that base, using that as a baseline, so that going forward, we can be able to do better than that and be able to maximize procurement from that. The other area of opportunity is import substitution and promoting exports. On the import substitution side, which is work, again, that as MASMAT, we've been doing in conjunction with DTIC, we've identified certain product categories where we used to import the products from outside. And we've identified local suppliers that we back, we support, and we've helped them to build the capacity to manufacture locally. I can make an example of nails, for example. The nails that you used to buy from Builders Warehouse used to be imported from the Far East. We identified a supplier in Durban. Now they are all localized. The jobs have been localized, and we are manufacturing them in tens of thousands. And then the second example is one of a female-owned business not far from here in Johannesburg, which is owned by Mahlatsi Mashile. It's called Repso. They manufacture the chefware. Those of you who like fine dining, the waiters and waitresses and the chefs that serve you in those restaurants, they wear those uniforms. They largely buy them from Macro. We used to import that product from outside. We identified a young black lady who is now supplying us 100% from her factory in Johannesburg. And during the COVID challenges that we faced, we managed to work with Mahlatsi to repurpose her factory to manufacture masks for our 40,000 or so associates, employees across all the MASMAT stores. They worked within 2 weeks. The industrial engineers managed to assist her to repurpose her plant, and she was able to also contribute to the fight against COVID. And we all know that globally, supply chains were disrupted, and African countries were behind in terms of access to PPE. There was PPE nationalism, and now we've moved to vaccine nationalism. But if we do not build our own industrial and manufacturing capacity domestically, when the next pandemic comes, we will be found wanting. I think this is an opportunity to use the power of women entrepreneurship, integrate them fully and firmly into our supply chains and value chains so that they can build scalable enterprises. Just lastly as well, through the work of Minister Davis, he had a meeting with Judith McKenna, who is the president and CEO of Walmart International at Davos in 2019. And out of that meeting, we had buyers from Walmart visiting us in October 2019 in South Africa to meet with local suppliers. Out of those 18 suppliers that they met, they identified 7 of them as having a potential to be able to be assisted to export their products outside of South Africa into Walmart. And so far, we've managed to get a company called Glenat. They manufacture Christmas crackers, which are confetti popping. They're now listed in 800 stores in the United States, Walmart stores, which are bigger than MASMAT stores. And MASMAT, even if they were supplying us in South Africa, MASMAT only has 411 stores. Now they're listed in 800 stores, which is a much bigger universe of opportunity for them than what we have done. So I think one of the challenges or opportunities we have is really to look at, to shift our paradigm and reset our approach to women businesses and small businesses. We shouldn't see them as local operators here.
Yeah.
Let's look at how can we globalize their footprint.
Yes.
We've seen some amazing success stories in terms of assisting local suppliers, small and medium enterprises to access global supply chains. And I think as a country, if we can have a strategy in all sectors to really look at how we penetrate the global value chains of the Fortune 100 companies, FTSE 100 companies, the top companies in Germany, top companies in Japan, we can really end up having a small and medium vibrant sector that is as competitive as the Germans are, as the president was sharing with us, as Switzerland is, and we can be able to build formidable enterprises. MASMAT, the company that I'm chairing, in the 90s, it was founded by Mark Lamberti, 6 stores. It was a small business. Today's small businesses, in closing, today's small businesses are tomorrow's global giants. Walmart itself, being the largest company by turnover globally, and in terms of employee numbers, to started by Sam Walton, 1 store in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Today, it's a global giant. So I think the art of the possible is really something that we have to revisit. We need to raise the scale of our ambition. We need to collaborate across sectors, work hand in hand in the best interest of our South African national economic interest, and also build companies that are of a global scale, that are globally competitive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dlamini. I think that certainly deserves a round of applause. We're at the tail end of our conversation, but I've just gotten a little note for one final comment, Nozipho. So, Minister Patel, I'm going to give you the 30 seconds that you've asked for to make a final comment before we wrap up. Please go ahead, sir.
Well, first, thank you very much. And I think what all of this demonstrates is progress. Much more needs to be done. Men need to embrace the task that the Women's Economic Assembly has put up as much as it's a task the women take up, not as an act of charity, but because it's fundamental to economic growth and to sustainable growth. And I want to say it's ultimately human beings that make that difference. And there are people in the room here. So if I look at it from a DTIC perspective, when we needed to appoint a chairperson to the board of the IDC, which is our biggest development finance institution, it was Busi Mabuza. When we needed to appoint a CEO to the National Empowerment Fund, it's Pilisiwe Mtetwa. When we needed to appoint somebody who heads the incentive branch of the DTIC, the biggest mover of money inside the department, it was Malebo Mabichi Thompson. When we needed to think about who needs to head the transformation fund in the auto industry, it was Sizeka Rensburg. When we needed to think through who needed to coordinate and drive the facilitation of two master plans, poultry and sugar, it was Leo Bethlehem. When we needed to think who must drive the export effort of the department, it was of the Department of DTIC, it was Lerato Mataboge. And I can give you other examples to say, when you bring women into the economic mainstream, you get excellent results for the nation.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I could have ended it on a better note. When you bring women into the economic mainstream, you get excellent results. A big hand of applause for my panelists, please. Now, I'm going to ask my panelists to please stay put because we're really at the end. I'm going to invite Dr. Namane Makhao to please make her way up to the podium. We're going to stay put. She is going to offer us just a vote of thanks and some closing remarks. And I'm going to ask, ladies and gentlemen, that we give her a round of applause as she comes up.
Wow. Thank you very much, honorable guests, our honorable ministers who are with us for the day. And let me acknowledge, even in his absence, our honorable President, Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, who opened the event today, and our honorable guests. This has been a fantastic day. And in closing, my task is a very easy one. I would like to acknowledge the contributions that have been made by UN Women, which has made this event today possible. Can you please applaud them? I would also like to thank, they've already been thanked, but they are so crucial and they are going to continue to drive this process. The two co-chairs, Futim Toba, and also Namtam Niki, can you applaud them? And silently sitting there, Dr. Olive Shisana, driving the process. And our colleagues from International Women's Forum, our president was here, Irene Chanley, she's left already. Can you applaud her? also the Vice President of IWFSA, Nolita Fakude. Today, as the President has indicated and as our awesome speakers have indicated, it's a real turning point. And I would like to believe that it's going to change the language of transformation in the country. Just the focus on women and also our awesome, hardworking, committed Minister Maite Nkwana Mashabane, can you applaud her? Who continues to be a spear in front and behind and supporting and anchoring us. The focus moves now from private sector and government moving parallel to coming together and being brought together by women in this country. I was fascinated and I listened to when Minister Toko Didiza was highlighting the fact that we need to be learning together. We need to be creating a common language. In our country, we have often said working together, and we've not really found that meaningful energy of working together. Guys, this is it. Let's work together. Listening also to Minister Patel talking about the importance of raising awareness about competitiveness, the importance of localization and building that pride and commitment from the demand side to the supply side and working together on this program. This is what this Women Economic Assembly is about. And it is about all of those areas. It's about a new language of working together, a new language of owning the challenges that we have, to have a mass-mat amongst us talk about the journey that they've been working with Department of Trade and Industry, to also listen to our minister talk about the importance of promoting that competitiveness, Minister Ndabeni Abrahams, all of our ministers are with us, all private sector that is here. This is the moment that we work together jointly to make our economy work through the challenges that we are facing. The Women Economic Assembly will be following up on the issues that have been raised, to be looking at, are we increasing the number of women in the various sectors? Are we also increasing the number of youth in the sectors? But most of all, are we building the necessary ecosystem? And to build an ecosystem is the different institutions speaking together. What IDC chair presented to us was also amazing. That you see a development finance institution that's talking about the need for smart finance that is responsive to the need of women on the ground. All of that is part of the new language that we have to engage on, where empowerment is not about throwing money at the problem, where empowerment is about joining hands to build a competitive economy. And so that we can come back and say in each and every sector, what has been done, what has been achieved, and also getting from business leaders, Bonang, we are also looking forward to you, to working with us, to helping us in saying, what is it that women-owned organizations ought to be doing? How is business opening its doors? What role should they be playing? And in actual fact, how are they collaborating to extend the competitiveness, to create opportunities, employment, to rebuild townships as we create a more competitive economy together? We've also introduced a very important aspect, that we are going to focus on excellence, that those sectors that are leading are going to be the stars that will focus on. It's not about control. It's about inspiring the energy, activating, and following those sectors and departments that are moving us forward, so that next year when we meet here, we'll be able to say, as the Women Economic Assembly, look at what has been achieved in this sector, look at what this business has achieved collaborating, because together we can move forward, working together for a brighter future. I also, as I'm closing, would like to thank our fantastic chairperson for the day, Nozibo Sabalala, who has been fantastic. And if ever there's anyone that we have forgotten, we'll continue to thank them. But this has been a special day, a special moment, and we've got to create a new language of competitiveness, of support for women-owned enterprises, of ensuring that we achieve gender parity within this decade. And with the kind of energy and brilliant ideas that we're coming up today, we are going to be able to achieve that. I thank you.
Financial emancipation, to me, means being able to have access to funding. Most of South African businesses struggle a lot to get access to funding. Hence, Mall for Women is assisting the vendors that merchandise and sell their products at Mall for Women.
I have two perspectives on this. In the short to medium term, the ability to achieve financial wellness and resilience that withstands economic shocks empowers my family, my employees, and community to do the same. Two, in the long term, generating generational wealth that facilitates ongoing enterprise and philanthropic activity 2 years to come.
Financial emancipation is essentially the freedom to choose. If you understand your money, you know how to work with it from both a personal and a business perspective, you are able to use it correctly to enable your future that will look brighter and better. It is essential for you to be able to empower yourself completely. You need to know your money, even if you aren't a financial person.
We've had a few orders from within the African countries, but mainly wherever there's a mine, there's equipment for us to sell, because each and every mine use the type of equipment that we are designing and manufacturing.
Financial plays a very critical role in gender-based violence. That is why in other times we cannot even leave the marriages. We get trapped because we are financially dependent on men. So it's up to us as parents to develop from young age the women to be independent and sustainable, so that they don't become victims of circumstances.
I certainly believe so. As much as our president has said that gender-based violence has become New pandemic that our country is dealing and facing with more women being
Activity yield is higher when you have more women in the business. Women empowerment is crucial because if you empower a woman, you know they're going to make sure that their families are being looked after.
Local Village Foods employs women. We are 100% women team. We have partners as well that are suppliers and manufacturers that are women-owned and led companies.